The moment our protagonist steps foot into the academy as their brand new instructor, the whole room instantly dismisses him. To them, he's just bottom-of-the-barrel garbage, a totally inferior. Why? Because in this twisted society, rocking a pair of ordinary human ears automatically slaps a massive. But the second he strides into that classroom, he lays down the absolute law. Their divine abilities are strictly off-limits for petty fights. Those powers are exclusively meant for slaughtering them. Naturally, there's always that one arrogant punk in the back who scoffs, claiming power is just power. Bro really thought he was the main character. That's exactly when our guy, Jin Shidu, hits him with a tantalizing wager. If this loudmouth, the kid eagerly bites the bait. He summons a crackling spear of pure lightning. Smirks tells the new teacher not to cry about it later, and hurls the deadly bolt. Boom, a dead center hit. The student flashes a wildly smug grin, until out of nowhere, a razor-sharp dagger comes slicing right through the It completely grazes his cheek, practically making. As the thick dust finally clears, plot twist. Jin is standing there, looking absolutely flawless, casually, radiating an intense aura, while maintaining an impenetrable energy barrier. He coldly points out that if he genuinely. Flipping the script, Jin interrogates his stunned attacker, demanding to know the exact activation trigger for their elemental spirits. The trembling student stammers out the textbook answer. You elevate your divine energy, channel it into the spirit, and will it into physical form. Basically, pure imagination. Jin nods slowly. He admits the kid is half right, but drops the real secret: it's all about frequency and wavelengths. Only after perfectly syncing with those specific vibrations can this profound revelation leaves the entire class utter. Jin takes it a step further, breaking down the reality that there are exactly 8 fundamental wavelengths governing. The standard ones are fire, thunder, healing, and ice. To these ignorant kids, that's exactly where the magic system stops. But the hidden additions, we're talking gravity orbs straight out of Gojo Satoru's playbook, absolute light manipulation, crushing atmospheric pressure control, and flawless spatial defense. Watching from the shadows, even the legendary Lord Gita is visibly shaken by the fact. Seriously though, putting that insane flex aside, how the heck is this guy so overpowered? And why on earth does having regular human ears make him a second-class citizen? To understand that, we have to rewind exactly 100 million years. A catastrophic apocalyptic event slammed into planet Earth, utterly erasing the human race from the face of the globe. The darkest chapter in history kicked off when an untraceable parasitic virus started aggressively mutating the local wildlife. It warped innocent animals into grotesque, nightmare-inducing abominations that, in just a handful of grueling years, the deadly outbreak spiraled entirely out of control, violently slaughtering 99% of humanity. The battered, bleeding remnants of mankind threw absolutely everything into holding the crumbling front lines, desperately fighting tooth and nail for survival. Tragically, it didn't take long to realize that bullets, bombs, and conventional warfare were practically useless against these hulking titans. Pushed right to the absolute brink of extinction, humanity resorted to crossing the line. After thousands of agonizing failures, Jin Shidu emerged as the solitary, triumphant test subject to display staggering superhuman results. To support him, brilliant scientists engineered a revolutionary countervirus, a massive swarm of microscopic nanomachines specifically programmed to cleanse the. Armed with god-tier, unrivaled combat abilities, Jin instantly transformed into the ultimate superhuman savior mankind had been desperately praying for. He spent every waking second throwing his body on the line, but in a heartbreaking twist of fate, it was all for nothing. The clock had already run out, and eventually the very last human heart stopped beating. Surrounded by corpses, and with literally 0 souls left to protect, Jin's entire existence felt completely hollow. He had brutally failed the one sacred mission he was manufactured to complete. Well, at least that's the depressing conclusion his lead scientist and close friend Kagura came to. But Jinha looked at the apocalypse through a completely different. In his mind, throwing in the towel simply wasn't an option. There was still. Sure, he couldn't drag the current generation back from the grave, but but he was fiercely determined that his godlike strength would one day protect whatever civilization rose from the ashes. With the experimental nanomachines already working overtime, relentlessly scrubbing the corruptor's toxic filth from the soil and sky, he held on to the unshakable hope that Mother Earth would eventually heal herself, and he was more than willing to wait and honoring his final wish. Kagura sealed him deep inside a state-of-the-art cryo-sleep pod, perfectly engineered to preserve his physical body through the dark ages ahead. And so while Jin floated peacefully in a deep stasis, the nightmarish beasts continued to ruthlessly tear the ruined planet apart. However, as bleeding decades morphed into centuries, and centuries faded into forgotten millennia, the planet's atmospheric shifts finally started snowballing at a massive scale. Deprived of their toxic ecosystem, those horrific, hypermutated apex predators slowly began to rot from the inside out. Their glorious downfall essentially paved the way, allowing this brutal, beautiful cycle of evolution churned non-stop for a staggering 100 million years, ultimately dragging us right to a modern-day scene where a trio of freshly evolved beings, three beast-like youths, sprint for their lives, desperately trying to outrun a nightmarish predator. Lungs burning, the panicked group spots a crumbling ancient ruin and dives inside for shelter. But the bloodthirsty demon refuses to quit smashing its way straight into the crumbling sanctuary. Pinned against the cold steel walls, with absolutely zero escape routes, the three accept their grim fate as monster chow. Squeezing her eyes shut, the terrified girl screams a final, hopeless prayer, begging their village's guardian deity for a miracle. Against all odds, her echoing voice penetrates the shadows, violently jolting our main guy awake. He had been slumbering inside a high-tech stasis pod, right? This relic of humanity casually fires off a blinding energy beam, vaporizing the hulking beast on the spot. The trembling kids are completely paralyzed by shock. But things are about to get even weirder. When a completely naked guy materializes out of the smoke, the absolute first thing this naked Chad does is hunt down his wardrobe. Thankfully, his gear sits perfectly preserved inside an impenetrable vault, designed by his old buddy Kagura. Powering up the dusty mainframe, he realizes he basically just speedran 100 million years into the distant future. Time had completely ravaged the databanks, so the mere fact this console powered on was pure magic. It turns out Kagura's engineered nanovirus executed its mission flawlessly, totally wiping out the vicious corruptors. That localized purge is exactly what kept this underground bunker. He also uncovers a cryptic data cube left by his former comrade, though its encoded message stays a total mystery for now. Pivoting toward the stunned locals, he is completely oblivious to the fact that his manhood is literally dangling in the breeze. The sudden realization that three actual children are staring wide-eyed at his junk makes him throw his clothes on in a flash. Looking just as sharp as he did an eternity ago, he confidently marches out of the bunker with his new companions. Stepping outside, he squints fiercely, as honestly he fully expected to walk out into a dead, decaying world. Instead, a breathtakingly lush paradise stretches before him, a massive upgrade from the toxic wasteland he left behind. The excited youngsters immediately pivot toward their home, practically begging their newly awakened deity to tag along. Meanwhile, our guy is completely zoned out, analyzing exactly what kind of mutant species is standing in front of him. By all logical metrics, human beings should be nothing more than literal fossil fuels at this point. These animal hybrid locals are clearly the wild byproduct of endless evolution crashing head-on with rogue nanotechnology. The craziest part of, they are speaking the exact same tongue that humanity communicated with ages ago. Since this practically proves they share the same ancestors, he casually introduces himself as Jin Shidu, telling them to just call him Jin. The tiny, goat-horned girl politely introduces herself as Hakama, pointing out her koala-faced buddy, Dampo. She then gestures to the shivering feline girl beside them. Cutting the polite chatter brutally short, Hakama grabs Jin's arm and yanks him forward. She frantically babbles that their tribal camp is just a stone's throw away. Her panic is palpable. She desperately needs this divine savior to obliterate the vicious raiders, currently tearing her home apart. But brutal reality sets in the moment they arrive. The settlement is already a smoking, ruined graveyard. staring at the raging inferno swallowing her entire life. Blinded by pure panic, she sprints straight into the fiery chaos, screaming for her mother. Scanning the devastating wreckage, Jin takes a mental step back to analyze this brutal nightmare. The absolute flimsiness of the town's defensive barriers immediately catches his eye. Every single perimeter wall and residential hut is slapped together. That glaring detail screams one terrifying fact: this so-called new civilization is technologically stuck in the Dark Ages compared to his timeline. Venturing deeper into the smoky ruins, Jin spots a battered woman locked in a vicious death match with a grotesque creature. It only takes one split second to see she is desperately losing this gruesome fight. His blood runs cold when he recognizes the beast. It's a spitting image of the nightmarish corruptors from his era. But these surviving parasitic monsters are far... Apparently, little Hakama has a bizarre secret of her own. She wields this mysterious, radiant magic that literally makes her body glow with pure energy. But her heroic intervention, totally unnecessary. Jin practically teleports past her and absolutely obliterates the beast with one skull. Without missing a beat, he sweeps the bleeding elderly woman into his arms, blasting out of the kill zone, leaving little Hakama with the perfect wide-open shot. Tapping into her mana, she hurls a bite-sized fireball that explodes with massive force, torching the monster into absolute ashes. Staring at the smoldering carcass, Jin's suspicions are totally validated. The airborne nanomachines have completely nerfed the creatures, stripping away their notorious regeneration powers. But here is the massive plot hole. How the heck is a local village kid manipulating that exact same tech? His working theory: these locals are somehow siphoning nanoparticles straight out of thin air, weaving them into explosive battle spells, exactly like his own fighting style. The giant glaring red flag here is that historically only pure-blooded humans could control this ancient tech. Burning with curiosity, he turns to the woman he just rescued. "Does everyone around here pack this kind of firepower?" he asks. She looks completely baffled by his phrasing, but quickly sets the record straight. In their world, only a tiny, elite fraction of the population can actually cast these spells. According to their lore, only those touched by the heavens are gifted with such holy abilities. Right here, in their own settlement, only 4 individuals actually possess this ultra-rare. Jin internally chuckles. It really doesn't take a genius to crack this code. Divine blessings is just their primitive, overly dramatic label for basic nanomachine hacking. Little Hakama sprints over to the battered woman, her own grandmother frantically begging to know where everyone else went. The old lady breathes heavily, revealing the entire town has already... Hearing this, a massive weight lifts off our hero's shoulders. But Granny is absolutely fuming. Why on earth did these kids run back into a literal death trap instead of retreating to the bunker with the rest of the survivors? After all that creepy crawler they just iced, it was just a baby. The fully grown alpha monster is still out there, tearing the landscape apart. Right on cue, a cocky voice slices through the rising panic. He boldly tells the trembling woman to drop the worry act entirely. As for that massive, city-crushing nightmare she is terrified of, this brash newcomer swears up and down he will butcher the thing all by himself. Granny's eyes widen, stunned, to see familiar warriors charging back into the bloodbath. She desperately grills him for updates on the refugees. The blue-haired swordsman gives a confident nod. Everyone else made it safely behind the barricades, and the grizzled veteran standing right next to him. That is none other than little Hakama's dad. The father-daughter duo instantly clash in a tear-jerking but the dad mode flips on fast. He furiously demands to know what she was thinking. With totally innocent eyes, the kid admits she hiked straight to the forbidden gate. Granny's jaw practically hits the dirt. The old lady totally loses her mind, screaming about how incredibly dangerous and forbidden that wasteland is. Local myth firmly dictates that whatever sleeps beyond those iron seals is the almighty, untouchable guardian deity of their people. Pushed to the absolute brink by the alien invasion, the tiny girl breaks into tears, confessing she just wanted to beg their sleeping god for salvation. Poking her little chest out with fierce pride, she aggressively points at Jin, declaring that the literal myth just walked out of the cave to save them. Granny, completely deadpan, is not buying a single second of this. She stubbornly refuses to accept this scruffy stranger as their holy savior. To make matters 10 times worse, based entirely on his totally ordinary looks, these locals instantly tag him as a bottom-tier peasant. So the very idea of crowning this random guy there, jumping into the fray, little Shandy desperately grabs her blue-haired brother, begging him to believe Jin is a genuine powerhouse. But the snobby big brother brutally shoots her down. With a mocking sneer, he points right at Jin's pathetic, totally normal human ears. In this brutal world, if you aren't born with clear-cut animal features, you're immediately tossed to the absolute bottom of the food chain. The way this arrogant dude sees it, his little sister is just completely delusional, totally blinded by some childish fantasy. But the young girl fiercely stands her ground, proudly declaring that our guy just wiped the floor with the mutant tracking them down. Totally unimpressed, her snobby brother scoffs at the news, bragging that he could slaughter one of those freaks without breaking a sweat. He then glares over at our hero, who honestly just looks completely dead inside from dealing with this pointless drama. Getting all in his face, the blue-haired fighter barks a harsh warning, basically spitting on him, he claims. They don't have a single inch of spare space for some Still shooting his mouth off, this loudmouth simply shoulders right past Jin. His ego is so blindingly huge that he actually volunteers for a downright suicidal mission, hunting down the colossal mutant, entirely solo, just for the record. And in case you were wondering, this overly confident blue-haired punk goes by the elderly woman instantly panics, her face turning pale over the idiotically impulsive choice SARS just threw out there. Taking a shaky breath, she pivots her desperate gaze back toward Jin. Despite not giving a single damn about his actual identity, she reluctantly swallows her pride, admitting it would be purely disrespectful to ignore his massive help. Because you know he literally pulled her from the jaws of death. After tossing him a quick thank you, she begs for one last solid, safely dragging the youngsters back. Meanwhile, she plans to sprint off and physically stop SARS from throwing his life down the drain. Shocker, our guy instantly shoots that request down. These people just insulted his core dignity to his face. There is absolutely zero chance he's just going to sit back and let them drag his name through the mud like that. Cracking his knuckles, he vows to aggressively prove that he isn't just some helpless extra. And he sure as hell isn't a bottom-tier life form. The camera swiftly cuts over to the murky shoreline nearby, the current nesting ground of the nightmarish, towering abomination. SARS violently touches down at the waterfront, and the madman doesn't even blink before locking himself into a deadly channeling crackling blinding voltage through his body and weapon. He launches a brutally fast, thunderous charge straight at the gargantuan freak. Trying to defend its territory, the disgusting Leviathan literally starts violently hurling its own squirming babies at him, like biological missiles. Fortunately, those gooey, underdeveloped grubs act as perfect fragile targets for SARS's heavily supercharged blade. Shredding through the swarm, he capitalizes on the opening, launching himself into the sky to carve a devastating deep gash right across the Titan's ugly mug. The hulking beast instantly unleashes an ear-piercing, blood-curdling shriek of, but come on, we all knew a boss fight wouldn't end in one hit. And we hit the nail right on the head, filling SARS with pure dread, that massive bleeding canyon on the beast's face. That horrifying plot twist completely freezes the electric warrior in his tracks, exposing his guard for a fiercely fatal retaliation. With 0 milliseconds left to evade, Jin swoops in at the literal final frame, casually catching the world-shattering blow with one hand like it's a gentle breeze. That fiercely egotistical punk suddenly swallows a brutally hard pill of reality, and folks, the real flex hasn't even begun. Scrambling backward, the mutated giant winds up to deliver a catastrophic slam, packing twice the kinetic payload. Our boy, though he absolutely refuses to give that ugly pest even a fraction of a second to follow through. Literally just flicking his wrist, Jin casually detonates a perfectly hollow crater straight through the creature's thick armor. The arrogant little brat just stands there totally paralyzed, staring at this god-tier destruction with his mouth hanging wide open. Seconds later, the frantic backup crew violently bursts through the tree line, skidding to a halt near the muddy shore. They barely have enough time to suck air into their burning lungs before a fresh wave of absolute disbelief sends their jaws plunging toward the dirt. They lock eyes on our protagonist, effortlessly holding back a literal titan with a single unbothered palm. While the beast furiously grinds away, desperately pushing with... Jin honestly just looks ready to yawn, completely losing interest in this one-sided struggle. Ready to instantly roll the end credits on this fight, he snatches SARS up by the belt and violently launches them both out of the crash zone. When the cinematic drone shot pulls back, we see the gargantuan beast brutally skewered from back to front by Jin's blindingly hot aura. Panicking SARS starts screaming that dropping giant nukes won't do squat if this hellspawn just magically heals every single wound. Lucky for them, Jin has been playing 5-dimensional chess and already calculated that exact annoying gimmick. This is exactly why he deployed his microtech aggressively hacking into the monster's biology to completely shut down its healing factor. Honestly, the slash SARS delivered a minute ago packed a decent punch, but it barely managed to scratch the surface of the real problem, short-circuiting the monster's insane regenerative abilities. At this point, SARS's brain is practically melting down as he wrestles with a wild theory. Could this seemingly pathetic kid actually be their legendary deity? Chuckling Jin casually brushes off the praise, refusing to accept such a bloated divine title. The only truth, he claims, is his core directive surviving the ages, to shield tomorrow's humanity, and to butcher the exact freaks of nature blocking his path. Pushed to the brink, the monster shrieks, violently thrashing its colossal tail. It frantically tries to crush the nimble warrior, but Jin simply flows past its brutal strikes, like a phantom. Having already mapped out his victory, Jin instantly paralyzes the abomination, burying it deep inside thick, glowing amber frost. While channeling a devastating strike destined to vaporize the freak, he finally drops his true identity. He boldly claims to be a living weapon forged straight from the darkest sins of mankind's past. A walking relic who just woke up from a 100-million-year slumber. The ultimate instrument designed to purge this exact nightmare from the planet. SARS is far too shell-shocked to grasp a single word of this crazy speech. Yet his only burning question is whether this kid can actually back up his colossal flex. And hell yes, Jin delivers. After all, he is the living masterpiece of countless horrific trials, an unimaginably lethal asset. Carved from a blood-soaked timeline, he stands as the very first, absolute, last, and only authentic human left alive. Speech concluded. Jin detonates an energy blast so scorchingly bright it reduces the beast to instant ash. The shockwave is so insanely destructive it rips straight through the atmosphere and punches a hole into the cosmos, ensuring absolutely zero chance for that ugly bastard to ever regenerate. With the Titan officially wiped from existence, SARS goes entirely mute, his massive, inflated ego instantly shattered. And meanwhile, completely hidden from the squad, a secret spectator is keeping close tabs on our protagonist, lurking deep inside the den. This shadow operative was initially deployed just to scout out the fresh threat reported by the lake. She never expected to hit the jackpot and witness an entirely different breed of apex predator go to work. In her expert opinion, not even the highest-ranking paladins guarding the royal palace would ever dream of facing down that gargantuan nightmare alone. Yet this nameless rookie just treated the whole fight like a stroll in the park. The covert scout is vibrating with so much adrenaline, she can barely hold it together. She is dying to sprint back and dump this massive intel onto her faction. Hours later, Jin boots up a 1-million-year-old digital recording, left behind by his old comrade, Kagura. His pixelated partner starts the tape by guessing that an unimaginable amount of time has slipped by, before Jin finally wakes up to hit play. Thanks to that colossal gap, Kagura is practically dying to know how the planet's future shaped up, and if the ruined ecosystem ever truly bounced back. But he doesn't pull any punches, dropping the harsh reality immediately. These vile parasites are never going extinct, no matter how much the continents heal. And frankly, that dark truth is painfully obvious, considering Jin just finished slaughtering one. Kagura confesses that during Jin's endless stasis, he routinely put himself on ice as well, just so he could wake up and track the slow, agonizing shifts across the globe. As nature slowly reclaimed the ruins, the raw number of those horrific beasts did start dropping. Tragically, as the food chain morphed, those monsters rapidly mutated to match it. That sick evolution proved one tragic fact: the globe would never truly wash its hands of this plague. To fight back, Kagura admits he deliberately hacked the DNA of the newly spawning species, gifting them the raw biological power to push back against the invaders, instead of just dying as helpless prey. On top of that insane science project, Kagura drops one last gift, a massive custom-built power boost, meant exclusively for his friend. That terrifying syringe filled with neon green fluid. Yeah, Jin has to slam that stuff directly into his bloodstream to trigger his next evolution. A surge of raw, crackling energy instantly erupts from Jin's body. That serum he just downed. It unlocks absolute flawless synergy with the nanomachines. The moment this brutal integration finishes, our guy inherits. He can forge solid weapons and objects right out of thin air, using pure nanomorphing tech. But here's the kicker. This massive power spike is barely scratching the surface. Through the hologram, his old buddy confesses that he stashed dozens of these insane power vaults in secret locations across the entire globe. He deliberately kept them separated, refusing to put all their eggs in one basket. It was a desperate failsafe, just in case those freakish corruptors. Plus, forcing Jin on this epic scavenger hunt guarantees he gets to actually explore and witness the breathtaking beauty of this reborn Earth, up close and personal. Kagura honestly admits he is totally clueless about how far the corruptor threat has mutated in this distance. Yet he holds absolute faith that this new future outshines the nightmare wasteland they abandoned countless lifetimes ago. As the recording rolls on the flickering projection, reveals the brutal toll time took on the brilliant scientist's aging body. It is a heavy, heart-wrenching scene. Kagura holds back his grief, crushed by the reality that he would never actually get. With the burden of humanity's survival officially passed to Jin, the glowing transmission fades to black. Perfect timing. Hakama and the local crew burst into the area, hunting down their so-called guardian deity. The feisty girl and that koala dude Dampo are practically ready to drag him back to the settlement by force. The whole camp is buzzing, waiting for his grand return. On the walk back, Jin's razor-sharp vision locks onto something. A remarkably familiar high-tech access key casually swinging from a chain. Thoroughly intrigued, he points out the necklace, asking how on earth a tribal girl scored a top-tier security pass. Hakama casually shares the lore. A legendary figure visited her ancestors ages ago, commanding them to pass the relic down their bloodline. She thought it was just a lucky charm. The ancient myth promised that, if absolute ruin ever knocked on their door, this exact trinket would awaken the guardian god to slaughter their enemies. Jin is practically speechless. A massive wave of respect washes over him, realizing his old friend orchestrated this entire safety net centuries. He owes Kagura everything. Meanwhile, back at the camp, a wild, chaotic feast is already raging around the bonfire. With the locals chugging drinks and scarfing down roasted meat, the kids proudly march, their ultimate weapon right into the center ring. But the vibe instantly sours. The grown-ups start whispering and side-eyeing, disgusted that their savior looks like a pathetic, inferior breed. In their ignorant heads, there is zero chance a completely average, flesh-and-blood human could ever be a mythical war god. Right as the trash talk reaches its peak, Sars violently kicks back his chair and stands. He absolutely rips into the crowd, screaming at them for disrespecting the absolute unit who just saved their miserable lives. The guy doesn't hold back, actually throwing hands and decking a few loudmouths in the jaw. He calls out their blatant cowardice. These exact same critics were the first ones sprinting for the hills. Standing on the sidelines, Hakama and Danpo are just cringing. The sheer hypocrisy dripping off Sars is actually hilarious. Let's be real, this clown was literally the loudest hater, mocking Jin's combat power barely 2 hours ago. Cutting through the bowing deeply, the old woman pours out her absolute, unwavering gratitude. She speaks for every soul in the camp. They all know the grim truth. There would be no feast. Every tent and villager would be nothing but smoking ash right now. Classic Jin. Our guy just waves off the heavy praise like it is absolute. He plays it cool, claiming he was just taking out the trash. But he knows tribal pride. They are not letting him walk away without rewarding him. Instead of demanding gold or rare loot, he asks for the ultimate currency: hard data. Jin demands a massive lore dump on exactly what happened to this broken planet. Sadly, a tribe of isolated forest dwellers isn't exactly packing the world built to uncover those massive truths. The elder points him toward the grandest stage of all: the royal capital, the impenetrable fortress where the king of Kermassia sits on the throne. With folks flocking from every corner of the world, the royal capital stands as a massive melting pot for global politics and top-tier intelligence. The locals mention that their very own Kodama village merchants regularly make the rugged trek, peddling exclusive local wear woven from premium silk and carved timber. Sure, the path ahead stretches far and crawls with danger, but the village elder insists Jin won't break a single sweat, considering our guy is clearly built different. She officially assigns Hakama as his personal navigator, urging Jin to bring her along, since the girl already had her sights set on the royal capital. Anyway, because Hakama belongs to that ultra-rare breed of divine power users, she's aggressively aiming for a spot at the legendary academy that trains elite spellcasters. Hearing that actual schools still operate in this chaotic era completely blows Jin's mind. Right on cue, we realize our protagonist has just bagged himself an incredibly rowdy diehard fanboy. Sars practically jumps out of his skin, volunteering to be the guardian god's hardcore escort for the trip. But Granny instantly bursts his bubble, bluntly reminding the kid he has absolutely zero business wandering into the big city. Refusing to back down, Sars proudly shouts that he absolutely does have a massive goal. He intends to enlist in the legendary Holy Knight Order. The old woman, though, sees right through his delusional fantasy. She ruthlessly roasts him, pointing out that Sars couldn't even scrape past the basic academy's entrance gates. So joining an elite squad of knights, pure comedy. This revelation genuinely startles Jin. Knowing the guy wields divine energy, Jin figured he'd waltz right through the admissions process without trying. Hakama quickly breaks down the brutal reality. The Academy forces applicants to conquer a brutal written exam, specifically designed to crush idiots, and unfortunately, Sars got completely wrecked by his own lack of brain cells. Jokes aside, Jin finds his curiosity piquing regarding this top-tier faction known as the Holy Knights. Speaking of the devil, the camera pans away from the quiet village, dropping us right in front of a heavily armored crusader. He stands absolutely paralyzed, absorbing the shocking news that the colossal beast ravaging the Kodama territory has already been reduced to dust. The messenger dropping this massive reality check is the exact same covert agent who stalked the entire lakeside. The warrior orders her to verify the insane report, and she fiercely doubles down, not stuttering for a single second. The Holy Knight practically short-circuits in pure disbelief. It totally shatters his worldview to think that some random outsider, completely unaffiliated with their elite order, packed enough raw explosive firepower to solo a catastrophe. Right mid-conversation, a corruptor suddenly launches a sneak attack, lunging straight for the spy's exposed back. In a blinding flash of steel, the knight whips out his blade, carving the vile monster flawlessly in half. Rather than pulling back to the kingdom's fortified walls, the warrior makes a reckless call. His curiosity is totally ignited, burning to personally hunt down and stand face to face with the mysterious powerhouse who casually butchered that colossal titan. Meanwhile, Jin opens his eyes to a breathtaking sunrise, deeply inhaling the crisp, untainted breeze. Still grappling with the surreal beauty of this untouched paradise, a heavy pang of regret hits him, wishing his closest comrade, Kairo, was right there to soak it in. A local kid suddenly rushes over with his gear, enthusiastically urging the guardian god to suit up. Cutting to the village outskirts, our protagonist prepares to march. Hakama's grandmother sternly commands the girl to execute her mission flawlessly as a guide, while Sars sulks in the background, totally salty that he didn't score the gig to escort Jin across the wild. Jin actually takes a liking to the fiery kid, genuinely complimenting his footwork and promising to keep an eye out for his arrival. That single compliment transforms Sars into a screaming fanboy, hollering his goodbyes and begging the deity to keep Hakama safe. Hakama herself receives one last warm blessing for the treacherous. Just like that, the dynamic duo kicks off their epic quest. Leaving the village behind, they trek through a mesmerizing montage of jaw-dropping landscapes. Hakama leads the charge until they finally pitch their tents under the stars. Staring into the fire, Jin casually asks how many. Turns out the capital is just a 4-day trek away, much closer than he originally figured. Hakama, however, is burning with curiosity about his past and what is driving his relentless thirst to explore this world. Playing his cards close to the chest, he simply smirks and brushes it off as but beneath that calm exterior, our guy Gojo secretly pieces together Kagura's vague clues, realizing the horrifying truth that the corruptors are still roaming. Hell, he has already crossed paths with a few in this timeline. Usually these twisted freaks only breed in toxic, rotting wastelands, which makes absolutely no sense here surrounded by pristine nature. This massive red flag proves someone or something is pulling the string, and he fully intends to drag that mystery out into the... Catching his intensely dark glare, Hakama flinches, snapping him back to reality, where he quickly apologizes for zoning out so hard. But one crystal clear fact remains these nightmarish creatures haven't completely conquered this era yet. Thriving communities and undeniable proof of life are everywhere. Step 1 of his master plan. Dig into the modern society of this timeline, then brutally exterminate the monsters. Dissecting and studying those beasts will be a walk in the park. He can handle that whenever he feels like it. Right now, though, our boy desperately needs a rebrand. He practically begs Hakama to drop the whole guardian god title. She treats him like outright royalty, forcing him to gently insist she just stick to plain old Jin. Suddenly, the heavy thud of galloping hooves shatters the quiet. A dazzling holy knight rolls up with his heavily armored squad, demanding a quick word with our traveling duo. Jin couldn't care less about the majestic entrance, bluntly demanding to know who the hell he is. Repping the Holy Knight Order, the Golden Boy formally introduces himself as Argus Olton, captain of the 7th Division. The whole Holy Knight gimmick is totally foreign to our protagonist, leaving him wondering if these are the fascinating hotshots the villagers gossiped about. Before things can stay civil, a stuck-up brat from Argus's crew completely loses her temper, screaming at the commoner. She is absolutely furious that Jin dares to sit while her glorious leader speaks. Barking wild accusations, she tries to convince her captain that our duo are the exact criminals they have been hunting. Argus quickly shuts her down, ordering her to cool it. While Karina grumbles in the background like a spoiled child, the captain pivots back to Jin with a much more respectful tone. But Jin's interest is already... Argus smoothly sweeps it under the rug, playing it off as his subordinate just lacking basic manners. Pivoting the interrogation, the knight presses Jin for details. Who he is, his hometown, and his ultimate destination. Stepping up, Hakama innocently explains that they hail from Kodama village and are making their way straight to the royal capital. That is all the ammunition Karina needs. Hopping right back on her high horse, she sneers and brands them as some filthy, inferior species. She literally launches into this snobby, dramatic monologue, acting like a 30,000 IQ genius for exposing these low-class peasants. Ironically, Jin just tunes out her insults, completely fascinated by the world's progress when she mentions standardized birth records. Cutting her off yet again, Argus snaps at Karina to stop jumping to reckless, idiotic conclusions. With a sharp, trained eye, he points out that little Hakama is draped in authentic, premium Kodama garments. These specific fabrics are highly sought after and respected even within the capital's elite circles. A random village kid wouldn't be caught dead in such luxurious thread. This rock-solid proof cements their story beautifully, slapping Karina's dumbass theory right in the face. But while Hakama gets a pass, the atmosphere turns deadly. Argus slowly draws his glowing blade, leveling the sharp steel directly at Jin's chest. His gaze hardens as he brands this mysterious man and For starters, Jin's strange outfit does not match any known kingdom, instantly raising... The armored captain lays out the cold, hard facts. Vicious bandit rings have been terrorizing the trade. As far as he is concerned, Jin fits the perfect profile of a ruthless human trafficker smuggling kids for profit. And to him, Hakama playing the innocent little victim is just part of their sick, twisted scam. Desperate, the little girl screams out a fiery denial, but the knights stubbornly refuse to buy a single syllable of her defense. Letting her panic take over, Hakama impulsively channels her raw energy, preparing to launch a full-blown assault. In a flash, several glowing magical swords, even trapped her explosive aura, earns a nod of genuine respect from the captain for wielding such intent. Jin watches the flawless execution with a quiet smirk. It takes mere seconds for him to recognize that Argus isn't just all talk. This holy knight packs some serious heavy-hitting firepower. Now holding all the cards, the golden-haired captain tightens his grip fiercely, demanding the absolute truth about where this stranger truly came from. That single piece of intel is the only thing standing between our boy surviving or catching a one-way ticket to the afterlife. But the moment those words drop, Jin shoots him a bone-chilling death. The air practically crackles with tension. But eventually Bro swallows his pride and breathes out that he hails from Kodama village. Karina instantly flares up screaming, "Liar!" right to his face, but Argus actually buys the story and lowers his blade. Talk about a massive plot twist, especially since the guy was literally seconds away from dishing out lethal threat. The Holy Knight admits he senses zero deception, right as Hakama proudly crowns Jin as the absolute guardian deity of their settlement. Now this whole guardian deity title, that definitely catches the knight's attention. Still, he brushes it off like a joke and spins. He swings back into his saddle, tossing out a quick apology for stepping out of line. Turns out Argus was just playing the bad cop to get his job done. The captain already knows their paths are bound to cross again at the royal capital. He even throws them a lifeline, telling them to hit him up if they ever get dragged into a mess. With that, he speeds off, leaving a deeply frustrated Karina, who was totally begging for a brutal showdown. Honestly, even Jin looks totally baffled by this girl's unhinged obsession with chaos. Cutting to the next scene, the squad is already marching toward their next waypoint. Karina won't let it go, aggressively whining that Jin is nothing but a walking red flag. She spits venom, insisting they never should have let such low-tier trash slip through. Those exact words hit a massive nerve. Argus immediately roasts the girl, mocking her for being completely blind to who the real bottom feeder in that room actually was. Backing him up, Rhea nods along, leaving Karina completely paralyzed with shock. She brutally lays out the sheer, terrifying power gap between their squad and the absolute beast they just faced. Flashback to that standoff. Argus actually tried to launch a strike 3 separate times in a single heartbeat, but his survival instincts screamed at him to freeze. He could practically feel that Jin standing there with one hand casually shoved in his pocket would blitz him the millisecond he twitched, and completely dismantle him before his sword even left the scabbard. I have no idea how that physics-defying logic works, but hell yeah, our boy is just built different. Get this. Argus even tried to spark up his divine aura, but standing in Jin's towering shadow, that so-called holy energy flat-out refused to ignite, sending a shiver of pure terror. The exact same technique that effortlessly pinned Hakama to the wall was absolute. Rhea tried to flex her magic as well, only to hit a massive brick wall, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that they aren't even breathing the same air as a freak of nature. In Argus's eyes, pulling off a flex like that is reserved strictly for the absolute top dog, the supreme commander of the entire Knight Order. Rhea sighs while Karina stands there dumbfounded. The clueless rookie had zero idea that they were standing at death's door just moments ago. Prince Charming hammers the reality home. They just crossed paths with a total glitch in the system. He lets Karina off the hook, though, giving her a pass since she... As for the mystery powerhouse who wiped out the invader at Kodama village, Argus is betting his bottom dollar it was Jin all along. Karina panics over the looming threat, but her captain plays chess, not checkers. He knows that throwing hands with an unknown god-tier threat, plus he figures Jin is somewhat reasonable, since he didn't immediately slaughter them, meaning their only priority right now is to haul ass back to the capital, since their mission in this wasteland is officially wrapped up. Their last piece of business is dropping a tip-off to the guild about the local bandit infestation. Deep down, Argus is completely starstruck by the terrifying aura of Kodama Village's so-called guardian deity. If they could somehow recruit that absolute unit, he could instantly obliterate the mountain of crises crippling their nation. Jumping back to our duo, Jin is hitting the dusty trail, with Hakama casually dropping that they bumped into a pretty hardcore dude earlier. He genuinely wonders out loud if every single holy knight packs the same insane punch as that captain. But Hakama quickly shuts that down, clarifying that Argus is a rare elite breed. Even within the massive knight order, only the absolute cream of the crop earn the title of Holy Knight and grab the reins of leadership. Argus practically sits on the throne of that elite club. She even mimics just how terrifyingly fast he triggered his spirit arts during the standoff. Now that's a magical phrase our boy has literally never heard before. Turns out in this modern era, siphoning the raw energy of spirits is rebranded as divine power, the secret technique they use to manifest this raw energy. It's essentially known as the spirit method, or just straight-up spirit arts, which means Kagura and Jin's cutting-edge nanomachines are basically being worshipped like some mystical god-tier spirits that these locals can't even wrap their heads around. He totally gets it, though. To the people of this era, their tech must look like something ripped straight out of a bizarre, glitchy fantasy novel. Still, his mind flashes back to Karina's absolute burning outrage whenever that specific phrase snags Jin's attention, leading him to discover that this futuristic wasteland is actually packed with a bunch of totally different humanoid races. We're talking about mutants that straight up look like giant insects or deep-sea fish. And according to the wild stories passed down from her grandma, certain species are biologically locked to surviving entirely. Over the centuries, nature basically forced their bodies to aggressively mutate and adapt just so they wouldn't go extinct in this harsh world. This piece of lore totally blows Jin's mind. He instantly pieces together that the original human survivors must have been ground zero for triggering this insane massive evolutionary leap exactly 100 million years down the line. But he decides to pump the brakes on that massive lore dump. Instead, Jin puts two and two together. The regular humans who completely failed to mutate and basically devolved into the absolute joke of this new world. Now aggressively branded as the inferior species for their lack of evolution, they're treated like utter garbage. Society looks down on them as stripping away all their basic rights and shamelessly auctioning them off as literal slaves. The grim reality of human trafficking thriving in this futuristic timeline seriously disgusts our guy. But Hakama completely stands her ground on the matter. With a pure innocent smile, she boldly declares that there is absolutely zero difference between the elites and those labeled as inferior. She honestly can't wrap her head around why society treats innocent folks like absolute trash, just because their genetics look. In her eyes, every single person on this planet is a total weirdo in their own. Hearing such profound, mature wisdom coming from a kid leaves Jin genuinely amazed by her rock-solid. But right in the middle of this wholesome chat, a heavily battered and bruised figure stumbles directly into their path. The mysterious kid completely collapses on the dirt, practically crying out for a savior. While Hakama instantly sprints over, in a sheer panic, Jin keeps his guard up. Scanning he quickly notices a massive red flag. This kid lacks any sort of furry or scaly animal ears, proving they are 100% purebred human. And man, this poor child is absolutely painted in dark, horrifying welt. Those brutal, systematic marks definitely aren't from some clumsy tripping accident. Hakama struggles with all her might to hoist the victim up, while our boy channels his inner energy to kickstart the healing process. But instead of a tearful thank you, the victim instantly drops the fake crying, whipping out a cold steel blade and pressing it right against Hakama's throat. The trap is officially sprung. They viciously vow to slit the little girl's throat if Jin even thinks. Yeah, things just went completely sideways, way faster than our protagonist ever anticipated. The harsh reality hits him like an absolute truck. They've been walking blindly into a meticulously. His eyes dart around the perimeter, furiously hunting for hidden backup. Suddenly, a grown man literally phases into existence out of thin air. He smirks proudly, applauding the hostage-taker Poiret for executing his twisted orders to Turns out this insane magic trick is actually stealth camouflage, heavily powered by an intricate network of microscopic nanomachines. They literally hijack the light and textures from the background, spinning it into a flawless, high-tech invisibility cloak. The only fatal flaw here, the illusion immediately shatters the second the user takes a step. Still, you gotta hand it to these thugs. They weaponized it brilliantly. The bandit captain instantly starts talking trash, mocking Jin. He aggressively demands to know where a nobody like him scored such elite gear. But our guy He is a literal block of ice. Jin holds his stoic mewing streak, refusing to utter a single syllable. Hakama screams out his name in sheer terror. The captain just sneers violently, promising to paint the dirt with the... Driven by pure desperation, Hakama fully rebels, forcefully sparking up her own hidden powers. But Jin immediately bellows out a bone-chilling roar, commanding her to stand down. There is no way he's letting a pure-hearted child, caught completely off guard by his intense scolding. The little girl just freezes. Meanwhile, Captain Scumbag is practically drooling with excitement. He just hit the absolute jackpot, realizing this tiny hostage is packing some crazy device. The thugs immediately interrogate Jin eagerly, wondering if he's hiding the same overpowered abilities. But bro is feeling incredibly petty. He casually plays dumb, leaning fully into the mysterious. Completely enraged by his arrogant silence, one of the muscleheads brutally sweeps Jin's legs out. He violently warns the inferior. The captain quickly barks at his lackey, heavily annoyed that his brainless goon is out here bruising up their shiny new merchandise. Though let's be real, they highly doubt a scrawny dude like Jin is going to fetch a massive fortune at the black market anyway. In their greedy, narrow minds, there is absolutely zero possibility that someone looking like a totally useless, unevolved peasant could ever wield true divine. Meanwhile, the horrifying truth finally hits Hakama. These are the exact same ruthless cutthroats and slavers Argus had explicitly warned them to avoid. Not wasting a single second, the bandit boss ignites his own deadly magic, zeroing in to eliminate the girl first. Pure terror grips Hakama as a chilling realization crashes over her. But completely shattering that heavy tension, the very next scene hilariously cuts to Jin abruptly jolting her right out of her. Our boy is standing there bare-chested, because those punks literally stripped him of all his gear, leaving him in absolutely nothing but his boxers. Hakama dusts herself off completely unharmed, but her eyes dart through the air feels heavy and oppressive. It is a massive, claustrophobic holding facility designed to cage the stolen slaves. Jin leans in and drops the harsh truth. They are standing right in the heart of the bandit syndicate's lair. The prisoners are a heartbreaking sight, looking absolutely battered. Almost all of them belong to the so-called inferior races, rotting away in this grim nightmare. Yet, in a hilarious contrast, Hakama isn't. She stares in utter disbelief, questioning why this guy is casually flashing. Jin simply shrugs it off, explaining that his captors stripped him of absolutely everything, just because he looked suspicious. Still, she cannot help but marvel at the sheer unbothered confidence radiating from this half-naked man. Honestly, being wardrobe choices aside, a burning question eats away at her. Why on earth did he just surrender without throwing a single punch? Packing ridiculous god-tier strength, he could have effortlessly obliterated that entire squad in the blink. But before the words even leave his mouth, the heavy door swings open and Poir steps inside, carrying their morning meal. Spotting the two wide awake, she quietly slides the trays of food their way. Hakama instantly glares at her, blood boiling, but Poir remains completely unfazed. She honestly could not care less about their burning hatred, having long abandoned any hope of ever earning their forgiveness. While the innocent girl seethes with pure frustration, Jin suddenly drops a bombshell that leaves the blue-haired traitor completely speechless. The brutal reality check hits this fake victim like an absolute freight train. But looking her dead in the eyes, Jin casually shatters her illusion, dropping the cold, hard truth, truly completely ignoring if they were despised right from the start, or if they even earned a single ounce of. Honestly, the simple fact that Poir even worries about this proves she's got a pure heart beneath it all. Meanwhile, our half-naked hero is entirely done with his channeling his inner Uncle Iroh. He grips the solid steel bars and literally pries them apart with his bare hands, ripping a massive hole right through the cage. Poir's jaw practically hits the floor, absolutely paralyzed by the sheer raw strength she just witnessed. The crazy part, Jin didn't just break out on a whim. He's been patiently waiting in that cell this whole time just to get her alone for a quick chat. The blue-haired girl is totally bewildered, but Jin already sees right through her act, knowing damn well she's being forced to do their dirty work. He straight up calls her out, guessing they've locked up someone she deeply loves. Hearing him hit the nail right on the head leaves Poir absolutely frozen in fear. Without missing a beat, he starts healing her brutal injuries, casually mentioning that her genuine bleeding wounds were the only reason he fell for the trap in the first place. Think about it. Ruthless thugs don't to an inch of their lives. That bloody detail gave it all away instantly, telling him she was a desperate hostage acting against her will. His unexpected kindness hits her like a freight train, shattering her emotional walls, and letting all that buried guilt pour out, finally giving her the courage to confess that these twisted scumbags are holding her helpless little brother hostage. They've been dangling his life over her head, violently threatening to traffic the kid overseas if she ever disobeys, ensuring she'd never see his face again. Completely breaking down, Poir collapses onto her knees, violently sobbing. These absolute monsters had already butchered her parents in cold blood. Her little brother is the absolute only family she has left, and listening to her tragic reality flips a massive switch inside Jin. A terrifying, murderous rage boils up behind his eyes. Watching this unfold, Hakama finally... His endgame was always about rescuing the innocent hostages from the inside out, while fully knowing these criminal parasites are like a stubborn plague. If even a single rat slips through the cracks, it spells total disaster, since they'll just crawl back into the shadows, multiply, and strike again. To put it simply, our boy plans to exterminate every last one of these roaches in one fell swoop. And he kicks off the slaughter festival by absolutely obliterating that furry guard. With the exit blown wide open, our very own Gojo Satoru is fully locked in, ready to tear these pathetic lowlifes to absolute shreds. Jin understands the dark, twisted psychology of these villains better than anyone alive, and that terrifying brilliance will make perfect sense when we jump back in time. Let's rewind 100 million years, right to the absolute peak of human civilization's technological goal. Back then, our boy was just a broken kid with absolutely zero to his name. He started out idolizing the concept of justice. But that naive dream quickly morphed into a terrifying wake-up call. Because a society begging for heroes is secretly crawling with absolute scumbags. The exact kind of predators constantly gunning for his head, for instance. Having a boring, normal life. That is a straight-up luxury. Surviving in that brutal wasteland meant the kid never caught a single second of the peace he endlessly craved. So whenever some thugs decided to test him, Jin completely flattened them under the sheer pressure of his overwhelming force. Shattering bones and wrecking lives, year after year, he became a one-man wrecking crew against the criminal underworld. He kept obliterating anyone threatening the peace, right up until a mysterious guy showed up with a wild theory. The stranger claimed Jin was literally dumped into the wrong dimension, which snaps us right back to the present. Our guy swaggers forward like an absolute unit, ready to dismantle the clowns blocking his path. Already leaving a mountain of corpses in his wake, bro is just here to skyrocket his body count. Skipping the villain monologue, he violently hurls a battered thug straight at the frontline goon. The second the lackey catches his buddy, Jin blitzes in with a blinding kick. The surviving friend freezes in pure horror as Jin caves the guy's chest in, blasting him into a massive crater in the solid concrete, looking less like a human and way more like an unstoppable, bloodthirsty beast who forgot how to hit the brakes. Panicking, the grunt scrambles for his life, but it is totally useless. Only his blood-curdling shrieks echo down to the prisoners below. Down in the cells, Poiré immediately recognizes the agonizing sounds coming from above. She starts freaking out, wondering what kind of monster Jin actually is. He tells her to chill out, guaranteeing this powerhouse will solo the entire compound without breaking a sweat. Their only job right now is to strictly follow orders and sprint for the exit. Yet the sheer violence of their rescue leaves, because this bandit boss is no joke, wielding a seriously lethal talent for high-tier divine magic. In a straight-up fistfight, betting against that mob leader seems like pure suicide. But while she wastes time panicking, our protagonist already has this so-called boss violently shivering on his knees. The coward pleads for his life, desperately offering mountains of cash and even tossing human captives into the bargain. Which, by the way, includes Poiré's captive brother, locked right inside this very room. Utterly repulsed by the slave trade offer, Jin mercilessly executes another goon right in front of the boss's face, leaving the crime lord completely mind-blown, desperately trying to process the slaughter. His fancy spirit arts entirely fizzle out, completely suppressed by the sheer intimidation of Jin's godly abs. I mean, his overwhelming aura. But the real mystery is how this dude got so insanely busted. In a savage roast, Jin casually brands the guy a third-rate villain, since actual top-tier bad guys at least have the survival instincts to sprint when they realize they are hopelessly out. Instead, this mob leader and his lackeys are just arrogant punks who get off on stepping on the weak. They hype themselves up thinking they are invincible. But the exact second death knocks on their door, they start crying for mercy. This psychological destruction is incredibly satisfying. Taking the brutal advice, the boss finally scrambles to his feet and bolts. He dashes straight for the elevator mechanism, yanking a lever to unleash a monstrous secret weapon they had chained up. Jin is genuinely caught off guard seeing a fully tamed corrupted. It is a though honestly it blows my mind how this giant purple Arnold Schwarzenegger knockoff could not just rip through those bars on day one. Thrilled to finally test Jin, the bandit boss swears to turn the entire facility into a blood-soaked nightmare. Bellowing a deafening roar, the mutated freak aggressively lunges forward, bringing its massive fists crashing down, fully intending to turn Jin into a human pancake. But the devastating strike gets casually swatted away, giving us a glorious camera angle of his massive gyat. The crime boss is left totally paralyzed in shock, stunned by the sheer power of Jin's bakery. I mean the explosive force of his god-tier. Unbothered Jin casually drops the mic, revealing he was quite literally born rocking this superhuman anatomy, packing muscle density that completely obliterates the physical. Seizing the offensive, he ruthlessly boots the monstrosity across the room, promising to really let loose now. Channeling pure main character energy, our guy fires off a massive beam, obliterating the beast into absolute dust with just one shot. So much for all that trash talk. The bandit boss ends up right back at square one, groveling on his knees. Jin pierces him with a deadpan glare, watching to see how this pathetic lowlife will squirm now that his luck has completely run dry. Predictably, the coward tries to backtrack, desperately pleading for his miserable life. But our glorious white-haired king shuts that down instantly. Dusting his hands of the trash, he reclaims his signature drip and turns to the captive kids, tossing out a quick apology for the holdup. But before leaving, he needs a paper trail. He starts digging around to secure some hard evidence of their shady operations. Ripping open a desk drawer, he uncovers a highly suspicious stack of ledgers. At first glance, you would assume our boy just struck absolute gold. Plot twist, he cannot read a single word of it. The foreign script looks like literal gibberish to him, meaning he will have to drag Hakima into this for a translation. Still, one massive question lingers in Jin's mind. Why on earth were these random street thugs casually tossing around corruptors? Hoping to piece together the puzzle, he kneels down to examine the mangled remains of the beast he just. By tapping into the local network, he hacks into the microscopic nanomachines floating in the air, basically turning them into his person. Scrolling back through the past week of security logs, he suddenly hits the exact jackpot he was looking for. The playback reveals a snobby aristocrat, hand-delivering the mutant to the gang, keeping his true motives entirely in the dark. But before stepping into the shadows, the mysterious benefactor dropped one chilling hint. The smug elitist boldly predicted the imminent collapse of the entire nation. Jin mentally bookmarks that massive red flag for later. Flipping over to the rescue side of things, the freed captives are finally stepping out of their nightmare. Plar desperately scans the crowd until she finally locks eyes with her little brother. They crash into each other, holding on for dear life, overwhelmed with relief that they both survived this hellhole in one piece. Wiping her tears, she looks up at Jin like he is a literal deity, pouring out her gratitude. But our humble king awkwardly waves off the divine title. Changing the subject, he shifts his focus to the heavily armed squad, in striking crimson uniforms, dragging the surviving thugs away. Turns out this organized cleanup crew operates directly under the local guild, and the absolute unit commanding them, that bearded powerhouse radiating authority, is none other than the city's guildmaster himself. Intrigued by the sheer carnage left behind, the veteran approaches Jin, questioning if he is the architect of this beautiful destruction. Our boy smoothly admits that he did in fact solo the entire base. Hearing this, Podrick formally drops his title as the reign. But as Podrick studies the young warrior, his mind races. He is completely mind-blown. How did this kid decimate an entire armed syndicate without suffering a single scratch? On paper, Jin's physical traits make him look like a total pushover from a lower-tier race. Yet beneath that unassuming exterior, Podrick senses a terrifying aura. Breaking the silence, the veteran reveals the massive toll these outlaws have taken on the city, pushing bounty requests through the roof. This catches Jin off guard. Wouldn't the ruling lord aggressively hunt down these parasites to protect his territory? The guildmaster chuckles darkly, explaining that local lords do not actually wield that kind of ultimate power here. Cracking down on crime falls strictly onto the shoulders of the guild, the sworn enforcers, operating directly under the king's absolute decree. In fact, if the regional boss Lord Shapian was caught moving dirty money, they would bypass him completely and escalate the charges straight to the royal throne. While tossing out the scenario lightly, Podrick sounds dead serious about enforcing that chain of command. Flashing back through 100 million years of ancient history, Jin rapidly connects the dots. It clicks. The local lord is basically just a glorified... Still, his gut screams that this Shapian guy is shady as hell. Deciding to play along, Jin hands over the suspicious stack of documents he looted, asking if the guild's intel team can crack them. Podrick scans the top page, his eyes going wide. He realizes he is holding a literal black book of every corrupt client doing business with. Armed with these receipts, the authorities can effortlessly sweep up the... Sensing an opening, Jin casually leans in, asking the million-dollar question. Is the Amazingly, Lord Shapian's name vanishes from every record. The mastermind completely erased his tracks, proving just how dangerously cunning he really is. Jin hits a dead end, for the moment. He shattered the slaves' chains, but now a burning question remains. What happens to these survivors? The guildmaster steps up, swearing that the guild will safely escort anyone home, provided their families actually filed a missing persons report. But for the forgotten ones, without a trace of a paper trail, they are tragically left to wander, completely homeless. The system is utterly broken. It completely abandons orphans like Poir and Nino, who tragically lost their parents. Refusing to let them rot on the streets, Jin demands a safe haven for the kid. But in a jaw-dropping twist, this brutal era doesn't even have a single orphanage in the entire town. Podrick offers to hunt for jobs instead, though. Placing 2 kids branded as inferior is going to be a massive uphill battle. The youngsters hang their heads in despair, leaving Jin deeply frustrated that this universe is just as rigged as his own. He absolutely refuses to abandon them, even with 0 job prospects on the horizon. Then a brilliant spark ignites in his mind. He turns to the duo, asking if they would be brave enough to tackle a job if he magically pulled some strings. Poir eagerly nods, instantly jogging Jin's memory of Argus the Golden Knight, who previously promised to return a massive favor. The camera cuts to the dazzling royal capital of Cormotia, catching up with the legendary Argus. As the Holy Knight marches home, an icy shiver violently ripples down his spine out of nowhere. Stepping into his grand estate, he dismisses his weary squad, ordering them to catch some much-needed... Argus strides straight toward his private chambers. A massive fleet of maids and butlers swarm the hallway, bowing deeply to welcome their glorious hero. He immediately demands a status report, and reading the panicked reactions of his servants, the Holy Knight instantly realizes that absolute disaster. The head butler stammers out a frantic apology for dumping bad news on him so quickly, while Argus's sister silently observes the chaos from the upper balcony. Eyes narrowing into a fierce glare, Argus scans the critical report, groaning as a massive migraine hits. The reality is infinitely darker than he ever imagined. A mysterious invader completely breached the capital's defenses, unleashing pure carnage in the streets. He doesn't even care how the monster slipped past the walls. The truly terrifying question is who acted as the beast's inside guide. His gut points straight at Harness Academy, a snake pit crawling with shadowy figures, plotting the kingdom's downfall. Either way, he desperately needs elite allies to lock down the burning city. Meanwhile, Jin and his colorful crew finally hit the road again. blazing a trail straight. 3 grueling days completely vanish into their high-stakes extermination mission. Doubt gnaws at Pois. He anxiously wonders if a glamorous city actually hires outcasts, branded as inferior beings. Flashing a warm smile, Jin instantly comforts the boy, declaring that just knowing how to read and write gives them a massive advantage. He fiercely encourages the kid to hold his head high and embrace his worth. Up ahead, Hakama excitedly jabs a finger toward the horizon, shouting that their destination is finally in sight. Jin's jaw practically hits the floor as the breathtaking majesty of the royal capital towers before him. As twilight falls, they cross the massive gates. The sprawling metropolis pulses with endless waves of vibrant crowds. Hakama explains that this massive hub survives purely on global imports, transforming it into a treasure trove of exotic goods. You can even snag the legendary Kadama clothing they gossiped about earlier. Fascinated, Jin drinks in the sights, his eyes widening at a gang of massive insect mutants casually strolling past. A wild spectrum of unique races floods the streets, beautifully displaying how differently each species evolved. The stone-paved streets remain shockingly spotty, and security around here operates at an absolutely elite level. Yet beneath the glittering surface, sickening layers of corruption still rot in the shadows. Jin softly sighs, realizing that no matter the era, human nature always breeds the exact. Pivoting the conversation, he grills Hakama about the Academy's entrance exam, only to discover the trials kick off in exactly 1 week. The crew settles in, bracing themselves to kill time before the intense. Suddenly, a snobby blonde girl eavesdrops on their chat, openly mocking the idea that a ragtag squad like them actually dreams of infiltrating Harness Academy, especially when they look like nothing more than a pathetic pack of inferior rejects. The crew finally hits the hotel, and Hakama and Nino instantly nosedive straight into those plush mattresses. Man, it's been way too long since they actually had a decent place to crash. Now that Jin has officially checked off his main objective of infiltrating the capital, the ultimate question pops into his mind. What exactly is his next move? I mean, sure, this might be an entirely different era, but cash still rules everything around him, and he desperately needs a steady income to keep his squad alive. Don't get it twisted, our guy did score a hefty payout from wiping out that bandit camp earlier. But let's be real, that stash will dry up fast, especially when he's feeding 4 hungry mouths. Plus, he's got this looming headache of securing safe gigs for the kids, and the absolute quickest shortcut to fixing all this mess: tracking down Argus. The only catch? They have absolutely 0 clues about where this dude is hiding, or who they even need to bribe to get a solid lead. Jin brainstorms a handful of strategies, ultimately putting the Corruptor investigation right at the very top of his hit list. He is fully aware that some shady folks in this timeline are actively trying to weaponize those mutated beasts for their own sick ambitions. These corruptors are walking natural disasters, meaning he absolutely cannot afford to just ignore them. There is 0 chance he's letting humanity get completely wiped off the map a second time. Not on his watch. He casually turns to Hakama, asking how the locals around here actually dig up classified info. Turns out they either bury their noses in books or interrogate an expert. The kicker, literature in this era costs an absolute fortune. Back in the village, the locals literally had to pool their cash just to afford a single volume. But here is the silver lining. The royal capital houses a massive, breathtaking library, making intelligence gathering a total breeze. Jin instantly locks on to this idea, realizing he can exploit their archives to hunt down any breadcrumbs leading straight back to Kagura's abandoned lab. Cut to the next scene and our boy rocks up to the front desk, only for the librarian to flat out slam the door in his face. Since knowledge is treated like sacred state treasure, they don't let random peasants waltz inside. You either need a badge from a prestigious academy or royal blood pumping through your veins to even step foot in this place, throwing a massive wrench right into our hero's master plan. Hakama hilariously roasts Jin, reminding the dude that he is practically illiterate in this timeline. Sure, he is busting his chops trying to memorize the alphabet, but mastering a whole new language isn't happening overnight. Bro is furiously scratching his head like a stressed-out college kid cramming for finals, while 2 cloaked figures are creeping in the shadows, keeping a close eye on our squad as part of their dark mission. They step up to confront Jin under the guise of a friendly chat, but instead they kick off the greetings with a ruthless sucker punch. Without even blinking, our boy casually catches the fist mid-air, brutally mocking the punk for his absolute garbage manners. So much for the capital being a safe haven when thugs are throwing hands in broad daylight. The attacker just smirks with pure arrogance, so Jin deflects his arm skyward, completely redirecting a lethal magical blast right into the cloud. The assassin actually commends Jin's razor-sharp reflexes, while Poiré is absolutely losing his mind over these lunatics' reckless use of divine power. Dead in the middle of a packed civilian street, our guy demands to know what these street trashes actually want. Quickly putting the pieces together, somebody has slapped a massive bounty right on his back. Ironically, this whole assassination attempt plays out perfectly for him. Even as these goons bark threats, ordering Jin's crew to pack up and flee the capital if they value their lives, Jin doesn't flinch a single inch. He openly dares the thug to take another swing, only to instantly trap his fist once again before mercilessly pile-driving him straight into the hard cobblestone. With one trash mob permanently humbled, he slowly locks eyes with the second attacker, who desperately unloads a blazing magic beam right at his face. Jin doesn't even bother sidestepping. He casually tanks the scorching inferno head-on, tricking this clown into thinking he actually landed a critical hit. But an iron grip pierces through the smoke, snatching the dude by the throat and hoisting him into the air like a rag doll. With his voice dropping ice cold, Jin absolutely humiliates them for stepping up with such pathetic strength, daring them to try again. If they even have a shred of willpower left, bro is unironically flexing that pure Gojo Satoru energy right now. Meanwhile, his choking victim is panicking, utterly baffled at how a supposedly low-tier species packs this much raw, monstrous power. Suddenly, a high-ranking knight crashes the party. Enter Karina, looking insanely pissed off that she had to sacrifice her precious day off just to babysit a street brawl. This girl doesn't give a single damn about the actual hitmen. She is fully ready to drag both Hakama and our boy straight into a cold jail cell, ultimately causing this massive public spectacle worked entirely in Jin's favor, successfully baiting someone directly tied to Argus, even if that someone is currently screaming her lungs out right in his face. Stepping into the messy aftermath, Karina suddenly locks eyes with Jin, her mood instantly flipping to pure excitement, because she believes she has finally... Karina catches Jin, the supposedly inferior human, caught up in another street brawl. Just as she prepares to rip into him, a nearby demi-human bystander steps forward, swearing she witnessed the whole ordeal unfold. The witness clarifies that Jin was actually the victim of an ambush, merely throwing punches in pure self-defense. Peering down at the bruised faces of his assailants, Karina instantly recognizes them as the usual bone-headed delinquents from Harness Academy. She silently prays the holy captain's little sister did not drag herself into this disaster again, shifting the focus. Jin asks if Karina is pulling patrol duty, mentioning that he assumed local guild members typically manage street security. Karina shoots back, explaining she was just handling her routine night rounds to keep the peace, while strolling toward a nearby cafe. Having witnessed this supposedly weak guy mop the floor with elite academy students, Karina realizes her captain's gut feeling about this inferior human might be dead on. Warning him to keep his nose clean, she turns to leave, but Jin blocks her path, seizing the moment to demand a direct audience with Captain Argus. Standing face to face with the 7th Division's commanding officer, the ancient human skips the small talk. He bluntly demands a job, throwing Argus's previous offer of assistance right back at him. Noting the young companions trailing behind Jin, Argus raises an eyebrow. Jin casually reveals he ran into the exact bandits the captain had been hunting, subduing the criminals himself before dumping them at the guild's doorstep. A wave of nervous shock washes over Argus. He struggles to fathom how a perceived lesser being could pull off such a massive feat in record time. Pressing on, Jin introduces Nino and his older sister Poir. He explains they are completely alone in the world, destined to face brutal discrimination for their inferior status. Because of this grim reality, Jin pushes the captain to secure them a safe livelihood. Argus firmly reminds him that these strays are not his responsibility. However, Jin fiercely pushes back, declaring he will shoulder the burden since he pulled them from the wreckage. Intrigued by this unyielding loyalty, Argus watches as the children gaze up at their hero with absolute desperation. The gears in the captain's head start turning, and he instantly spots the perfect leverage. With a cool demeanor, he offers to shelter and employ the siblings under his own roof on one strict condition: Jin must become an instructor at the academy. Without missing a beat, Jin takes the deal, and before long the children are suited up in pristine maid uniforms. Poir bows in heartfelt gratitude, while Argus orders his senior staff to train the rookies thoroughly and strictly forbids any toxic bigotry under his watch. Strolling down the hall alongside the captain, Jin cuts to the chase, asking what the real catch is behind this teaching gig. Argus confesses that while Jin's origins remain a complete mystery, his gut screams that the ancient human is solidly dependable. Dropping all formalities, the captain reveals his true hand. He needs Jin to go undercover and infiltrate Harness Academy. Jin's expression darkens as he demands the full story. Argus paints a grim picture of a brutal, unseen political war raging within the capital. Multiple vicious factions are completely deadlocked in a shadowy struggle for the crown, as the reigning monarch lies on his deathbed, ready to draw his final breath at any given moment. He details that beyond the standard bloody battle for the throne, radical outsiders, with zero royal blood, are plotting to violently hijack the kingdom. These rogue players are unbelievably lethal, going as far as weaponizing the corruptors' nightmarish monsters that modern society dubs invaders, to forcefully crush anyone standing in their way. Flashing back to the sinister Lord Shepian, Jin quickly connects the dots, realizing far deadlier puppet masters are lurking in the shadows. Argus states his mission is to drag these traitors into the light and crush their secret stronghold, with Harness Academy sitting right at the top of his suspect list. Pausing outside a heavy door, Argus knocks and introduces his new operative to his younger sister, Miria Ulton. He explains the young student will serve as Jin's personal guide through the snake pit that is the academy. Miria wastes zero time baring her fangs, snapping at Jin and labeling him a worthless, lesser breed, echoing Karina's earlier disrespect. The captain frantically jumps in to shut her down, scolding her for the blatant insult. But she digs her heels in, stubbornly refusing to hand over such a crucial mission to someone she deems absolute trash. Jin effortlessly calls out her toxic attitude, leaving the flustered captain stammering out a desperate apology for his sister's outburst. Leaning in close, Karina whispers a quick warning into Jin's ear. Miria might be incredibly gifted, but she harbors a deep-seated hatred for anyone below her status. Unfazed, Miria continues her verbal assault, flat-out declaring that this peasant has no business playing instructor. Hakama accidentally pours gasoline on the fire, happily blurting out that her guardian is entirely illiterate. But she instantly pivots, enthusiastically hyping up just how terrifyingly powerful Jin actually is in a fight. Hearing this, a chilling realization hits Karina. Miria was the mastermind who secretly ordered those academy brats to ambush Jin earlier. The panicked captain bows his head in shame, swearing he will hammer some manners into his unruly sibling. Brushing off the drama, Jin pivots the conversation, asking Argus exactly what kind of curriculum he is supposed to handle. Argus explains that after watching him in action, Jin's mastery over spirit arts is absolutely undeniable. That is why he is convinced Jin is the ultimate candidate to drill the raw fundamentals into these privileged rookies. He breaks down the 4 core disciplines: ignition, discharge, freezing, and healing. Master just 2 of these elements, Argus notes, and you are already considered an elite. Catching on to the fact that this era's foundation relies on a mere 4 arts, it suddenly dawns on Jin that the thug leader from before was actually a heavy hitter. The specific technique that criminal unleashed would easily classify as a rare high-tier spell in this modern age. A wicked smirk flashes across Jin's face as he is about to violently flip everything these modern mages know about true power. Fast forward 1 week, and the stakes are high. It is finally the day of Hakama's rigorous academy entrance exam. Argus strides through the gates with Jin trailing close behind. fully expecting him to step up and dominate the teaching position this term. By tradition, the Night Order is forced to sacrifice one of their own squads annually to fill this dreaded vacancy. And this year, the heavy burden falls squarely onto the shoulders of the 7th Division. As Jin silently shadows his allies, a massive, imposing man named Rudman locks his eyes onto him, burning holes into the back of his head. The group finally pushes through the heavy doors to the headmaster's grand office, where Argus immediately offers a deep, formal bow. A warm smile spreads across the headmaster's face, but the pleasantries fade as she brings up the fierce political warfare tearing the nation apart, quickly aiming her sights straight at Jin. She harshly warns the captain that dragging a low-born commoner into this prestigious role sends a terrible message, making the order look like an absolute joke. Argus fiercely holds his ground, boldly declaring that Jin outclasses every single soldier in his unit. But the moment the weasel-faced noble Lord Gita senses the headmaster actually considering the offer, he furiously jumps out of his seat to shut it down. Taking the baton of disrespect, the scrawny lord viciously tears into the ancient human, aggressively screaming that the academy can never, ever permit a pathetic lesser breed to taint their sacred teaching halls. The principal shifts her gaze to Lord Rudman, seeking his input on this explosive outrage. The heavyweight noble casually nods along, pointing out the grim reality of a massive revolt. Both arrogant students and elitist staff would completely riot. Siding with the nobles, the headmaster heavily sighs and admits she shares their exact same paranoid fears. Standing in the shadows, Jin realizes they are casually deciding his fate, like he is not even in. Refusing to be sidelined, he steps directly into the spotlight. Delivering a flawless, deeply respectful bow, he introduces himself with icy elegance, proving his unshakable confidence even while surrounded by venomous insults. Locking eyes with the snobby lords, he hits them with a razor-sharp question. Are they tossing him aside merely because of his bloodline, or do they actually think he is too weak to handle the job? The headmaster chuckles softly, stating, "The only thing that truly matters inside these walls is absolute, undeniable power." Leaning forward, she challenges him. Can he back up that quiet arrogance? Argus confidently throws down the gauntlet, proposing the headmaster test the man personally, and she eagerly takes the bait. Within moments, the stage is set for a brutal exhibition match out on the Harness Academy's, but it is the sneaky rat Gita who struts onto the battlefield to fight Jin. He cackles, maliciously mocking his opponent by claiming that since the yard is mostly empty today, the pathetic commoner will not have too many witnesses when he gets humiliatingly crushed. The headmaster steps up to lay down the ground rules, making it absolutely crystal clear this duel is strictly limited to spirit arts. After all, that is exactly the skill set she expects their brand new instructor to master and teach at this prestigious academy. A massive crowd of curious students swarms the arena, with Miria standing right at the front of the spectator pit. Her eyes are practically sparkling with pure excitement, as this is her very first chance to witness the infamous skinny rat throwdown in a real combat scenario. Jin already knows exactly how this massive mismatch is going to play out, yet he lets out a heavy, exhausted sigh and simply decides to give the entire institute a brutal front-row seat to. Argus, meanwhile, is practically sweating bullets, totally consumed by It suddenly dawns on him that he has never actually watched his highly recommended candidate throw a single punch in public before. The terrifying thought of Jin totally humiliating him in front of the whole school gnaws at his stomach. Lord Gita, on the flip side, is absolutely buzzing with chaotic energy, itching to crush his opponent in seconds and aggressively put Jin back in his pathetic little place. Snapping into a battle stance, Gita arrogantly calls dibs on the first strike and instantly unleashes a massive, roaring fireball, completely convinced this single explosive blast. But Jin just casually sidesteps the blazing inferno like it is absolutely nothing, while the skinny rat delusionally clings to his guaranteed victory, desperate to prove the captain's assessment dead wrong. He immediately chains his assault into his ultimate trump card, a devastating barrage called, while Jin just keeps effortlessly weaving through every single deadly bolt, pushing his opponent's simmering rage straight to. As the skinny rat smugly assumes Jin is just a cowardly weakling running for his life, our overpowered hero lets out another quiet sigh, mentally noting that this terrifying level of magic was never actually designed to be unleashed on fragile human beings. But since he is left with absolutely zero alternatives, Jin finally flips the switch and deliberately unveils a shockingly rare spirit art. Unleashing a crushing wave of gravity manipulation, he violently slams the skinny rat lord Gita face first into the dirt, pinning him helplessly to the floor. And he realized he was utterly doomed from the start. His bloated ego completely shattered into pieces. Both the headmaster and the portly Lord Rudman freeze in their tracks, their jaws practically hitting. Even Argus and his sister Miria are left paralyzed, gaping like fish out of water. They've never encountered such a flawless, terrifying surge. The moment they demand answers, Jin calmly explains that he simply bent the gravitational field surrounding Lord Gita. Hearing the crowd gasp at his unprecedented power, Jin cracks a faint smirk. It hits him both these hotshot students and the so-called elite professors are completely clueless. Pinned firmly to the dirt, Lord Gita aggressively gnashes his teeth, looking absolutely pathetic as he writhes in humiliation. Taking pity on the crumbling geezer, our protagonist mercifully lifts the invisible weight crushing his spine. Instantly, Gita throws a massive tantrum, screaming that a spiritual art of that magnitude breaks. He desperately accuses the inferior of utilizing some dirty, forbidden hack. Our guy simply stands his ground, effortlessly brushing off the toxic insults, while the bitter old man shrieks right in his face, like an entitled Karen. Silently analyzing the chaotic scene, the headmaster firmly locks in her final verdict. The surrounding cadets are equally blown away. Miria especially is practically short-circuiting over how he commands such an insane level of divine energy. Inferiors are supposed to be magically bankrupt. Her inner detective awakens, fueling a fierce obsession to expose Jin's true identity. Smash cut to exactly 1 week later, right in the middle of a massive welcoming banquet. The headmaster takes the stage, booming that Harness Academy exists solely to forge ultimate weapons against looming enemy invasions. If you're fragile, you're out. This fortress holds zero tolerance for the weak. But survive the brutal gauntlet and you're handed a golden ticket to absolute power and endless luxury. Watching from the upper balconies, a squad of demi-humans next to Miria drop their jaws at the massive wave of fresh recruits. Surprisingly, a huge chunk of these rookies lacks noble blood. Rias, a towering lion beastman, casually strolls up to greet Miria. He smirks, pointing out how weird it is for a high-tier noble like her to actually show up at this boring freshman orientation. Mid-conversation, Rias spots an inferior casually chilling in the VIP faculty row and practically coughs up a hairball. The moment Miria drops the bomb that the loser is their brand new professor, Rias's brain completely short-circuits. She turns to the lion boy, demanding his raw, unfiltered take on the guy's overall vibe. Rias ruthlessly roasts him, brushing the guy off as a tragic, washed-up nobody who is utterly doomed to die single. She chuckles, admitting she thought the exact same thing. Meanwhile, feeling dozens of burning glares piercing his skull, Jin's survival instincts kick in. He knows snooping around on day one is a death sentence. First order of business, completely wipe away his worthless inferior label and seamlessly blend into the background as an incredibly boring, harmless extra. As it stands, he's practically walking around with a glowing red bullseye plastered on his back. Once the exhausting assembly wraps up, the bell finally rings for his inaugural teaching session. Over in another hall, Lord Gita rallies the upperclassmen, barking that their brutal daily grind has officially resumed. He growls a vicious warning, threatening them not to let the hyper-talented fresh meat steal their spotlight. That being said, he puts on a furious act demanding to know why. Deep down, the wicked geezer is throwing a massive party, knowing these arrogant snobs would rather swallow glass than sit through a lecture taught by an inferior. The manipulative snake had deliberately leaked the schedule, just to guarantee Jin walked into an empty room. Shockingly, though, our badass professor doesn't give a single flying care about the boycott. Strutting to the podium with icy confidence, he casually introduces himself as the Academy's brand new spiritual arts instructor. Without missing a beat, Rias aggressively interrupts, challenging if this nobody actually possesses the raw skills to mentor the absolute most terrifying elite prodigies. Our absolute legend just flashes a calm, chilling smirk, casually suggesting that they'll find out soon enough. He even stares right into the beast man's soul, daring him to walk right out that door if the class proves beneath his level. With dominance violently asserted, Jin instantly hammers down his one golden unbreakable. He clarifies his mindset, immediately strictly forbidding his students from ever unleashing divine energy on human targets, under any circumstances. He breaks it down for the class. Divine power was never some holy gift. It was a weapon engineered specifically to crush the inhibitor's healing factor. But watch a human take a hit, and they patch up just fine. The real truth. This energy was always meant for one thing: wiping out trespassers. Right on cue, some cocky punk in the back row starts running his mouth, mocking him as some soft weakling who cannot even tap it. The arrogant brat flexes, swearing he has total freedom to unleash his power however he damn well pleases. Barely batting an eye, Professor Jin calls his bluff. He invites the loudmouth to step up and prove just how pathetic he supposedly is right here in the middle of the room. Jin practically dares the kid to throw his absolute best shot. Flashing a smug smirk, the brat makes a bold wager. If the professor even suffers a single scratch, he will drop the class forever. Taking the bait, the student summons a violently crackling spear of raw lightning. The sheer voltage is enough to make even Lord Gita stiffen with panic. A reckless blast like this could literally blow the entire lecture hall to pieces. Zero hesitation. The kid hurls the sparking javelin dead at Jin. The whole class holds their breath, totally convinced, the quote-unquote, but then a lethal blade slices straight out of the smoke. It slams brutally into the back wall, stopping mere inches from the punk's terrified face. Not breaking a sweat, Jin casually points out that if he actually wanted blood, that blade would have skewered right through his skull. And boom. Just like that, class is officially in session with rule number 1. Never ever judge a fighter purely by their outward appearance. Watching from the sidelines, Royce stands dead silent. He struggles to figure out if that terrifying move even qualified as a spirit art at all. Without missing a beat, Professor Jin paces the room. He breaks down how inferiors get slapped with that title purely, but right now, after completely outclassing every single person in the room, he drops a heavy question. What exactly does that make him? His overwhelming aura violently erupts to maximum capacity. That, he states coldly, is what you call a true instructor. Moving right along, he pivots straight into lesson number 2. He locks eyes with the now trembling punk, asking him for the golden rule required to trigger a spirit art. Trying to save face, the kid scoffs that it is basic stuff. It all boils down to having a hyper-vivid imagination. Visualize the attack vividly in your mind, and the spirits make it a reality. Jin nods, conceding that visualization is a piece of the puzzle. But he warns them that every single one of them is missing the core mechanic. He breaks it down. Spirits do not just read thoughts. They react to specific energetic wavelengths. And that is the truth. In total, there are exactly 8 fundamental frequencies. You have got ignition, discharge, healing, and freezing, the basic 4 everyone learns about. But then you have the god tier stuff. Gravity control, light manipulation, atmospheric shifts, and straight-up spatial distortion. Lord Gita practically chokes on his own breath, watching Jin effortlessly flex all 8 frequencies like it is child's play. Dropping that massive bombshell, our guy officially kicks off his very first hardcore lecture. Fast forward to that evening. Jin racks his brain, trying to figure out exactly how to crack the Academy's darkest secrets. The campus grounds are absolutely crawling with students. And after that insane flex in the classroom, his name is in literally everyone's mouth. To get real answers, he needs to infiltrate the strictly off-limits faculty zones. But while sneaking around, he ends up bumping straight into Miria. She cuts right to the chase, demanding he finally drop the act and confess his real identity. Playing dumb, he shrugs and asks how he could possibly be anything besides the weak link inferior everyone assumes he is. She admits she might have bought that lie, except for the tiny detail where he flawlessly commanded all 8 spirit arts, a feat that completely blows even the most elite demi-humans out of the water. Our boy just plays it cool. He claims it is really not that deep, comparing the ancient magic to simply clicking between different browser tabs, though internally he knows damn well the actual process is infinitely more mind-bending than that. Refusing to let it go, she drags him somewhere completely secluded. Once the coast is clear, she zeroes in and demands the truth again. This time he gives her the raw truth. He is just a regular human who spent the last few million years frozen in cryosleep right under Kodama village. Half thinking he is messing with her, she asks what he was supposedly doing before he turned into a human popsicle. Jin stares right back, answering with dead honesty. He was a Black Ops Special Forces agent serving his nation. Millions of years might have passed, but those brutal memories are still burned into his mind like they happened yesterday. Now deeply intrigued, Miria pushes harder. Why would a top-tier soldier fighting for his homeland be locked away in a freezing tomb? It breaks his heart to confess that his mission ended in total failure. He genuinely believed that if he just pushed past his absolute limits, he could keep everyone safe. But when the dust settled, everything slipped right through his fingers. He also drops a heavy truth bomb. Taking up the teaching mantle was never just a coincidence. He desperately needs the political weight of the Alton bloodline backing him up. Shaking off the gloom, he turns to her and asks where exactly she is. Before long, she guides him into a grime-covered abandoned space, noting it was once a basic supply closet for academy instructors. Right away, a peculiar owl carving perched on a rotting shelf snags his gaze. When he presses her for the actual reason behind this little detour, Miria comes clean. She has been tracking a bizarre, hollow void sitting right beside this very room. The gap is way too massive to be just dead space, leaving her absolutely convinced a major secret lies behind those walls. Without missing a beat, Professor Jin casually stretches out his arm and seizes the stone bird. She shoots him a baffled side-eye, totally clueless as to why he is stroking a filthy antique. But the split second he gives it a gentle twist, the heavy wooden shelves groan and split wide open, exposing a dark, gaping tunnel plunging into the depths. Without breaking a sweat, he coolly praises her sharp instincts for sniffing out the hidden chamber. Miria just stands there, utterly paralyzed, her mind short-circuiting over how effortlessly he cracked the puzzle. Our suave professor simply shrugs, pointing out that the little owl was completely spotless. Inside a forgotten dump, smothered under an inch of thick. Dusting off his hands, he orders her to stay put while he dives headfirst into the sketchy abyss solo. Caught off guard, Miria immediately fires back fiercely, demanding to tag along. He quickly warns her that a lethal trespasser could be lurking in the shadows, and his hands might be too full to keep her alive. But the fiery blonde makes it crystal clear. She is not some helpless damsel in distress. With total arrogance, she brags about being leagues ahead of her entire year, admitting that maybe, just maybe, her older brother could best her in a fight. Hearing her ironclad resolve, he sighs and decides to gamble on her bold claim. The duo cautiously inches down the crumbling stone steps, descending into a pitch-black drop that seems to spiral on forever. As they walk, Miria silently marvels at how insanely handy it is to summon a glowing orb in the suffocating gloom. Breaking the tension, Jin casually quips that this creepy underground ruin gives off massive video game dungeon vibes, just begging for a boss fight. Naturally, his nerdy gamer slang leaves the aristocratic girl blinking in sheer confusion. Shaking it off, her burning curiosity flares up again, steering the chat straight back to his shadowy path. She probes to see if he already has a prime target in his sights, considering tracking down deadly threats is supposed to be his bread and butter. A tiny smirk creeps onto his face, highly amused by how easily she swallowed his downright insane origin story. Tossing her a bone for her blind faith, he drops a bombshell he strongly suspects the esteemed Lord Rudman is pulling strings from the shadows. She immediately demands to know why he sounds so dead certain. Professor Jin breaks it down, pointing out that while the guy plays the ultimate charmer in the classroom, there is a skin-crawling eeriness to him behind closed doors. In those dead silent moments, that slimy creep radiates the exact aura of a mastermind, actively weaving a sinister web. He notes that this massive split in personality is a classic red flag for a psychopath wearing a friendly mask. To top it all off, it is glaringly obvious that the man's razor-sharp awareness goes way beyond a simple educator's paycheck. Miria sheepishly admits her radar was locked onto Lord Geeta instead. But Jin instantly shreds that theory to pieces, pointing out that a hothead with zero leash on his own temper lacks the icy calculation needed to pull off a grand conspiracy. Throwing her for a total loop, he even chuckles and wagers that the unhinged old geezer probably has a decent heart buried under all that yelling. Finally, the endless steps spit them out at the very bottom, expanding into a colossal, fog-choked cavern. Miria's jaw practically hits the floor as she gazes at the sprawling, nightmarish maze buried right under the Academy's nose. All of a sudden, Jin freezes dead in his tracks, utterly paralyzed by shock. Never in a million years did he dream of stumbling across Kagura's mythical laboratory, tucked away in a dump like this. The absolute clincher hits him when he locks eyes on the vault doors, heavily shielded by swarming nanomachines, a highly advanced tech that clueless locals brush off as simple. There is zero doubt left in his mind. This, right here, is the legendary workshop. A cold sweat breaks out on Miria's forehead. Despite prowling around for ages, she had completely missed this looming, ironclad gateway. This massive secret had been lurking right under the Academy's nose this whole time. Jin breaks it down for her regular folks would need a highly classified digital key just to crack a vault like this. His mind flashes back to Hakama, inheriting a similar passkey in Kodama Village, and he figures some shadowy figure operating here must have been handed a matching one. But here is the kicker: Jin already knows that he possesses ultimate override privileges, so without breaking a sweat, he simply raises an open palm. The security grid instantly scans him, registering his god-tier authority, and violently snaps the lockdown mechanism open. As the massive iron gates slowly grind apart, Jin connects the dots. Whoever is orchestrating a coup to topple the nation's leader definitely has VIP access to this exact bunker. Beside him, Miria is completely paralyzed, unable to process that a sprawling subterranean fortress has been lurking right below their classroom this entire time. Snapping out of her daze, she stammers, asking if he seriously bypassed that lock empty-handed. Jin, noting that ancient humans just have those kinds of perks. Hearing this, the final puzzle pieces click together for Miria, and realizing he is not bluffing, she silently trails behind him as they plunge deeper into the dark. What they find inside makes their blood run cold. Row upon row of hulking corruptors are locked away inside heavy titanium cells. But the creepiest part, every single monster is dead silent, showing zero signs of their usual This eerie stillness triggers a chilling memory for Jin. He flashes back to the beasts those bandits had captured earlier, acting the exact same way, like lifeless statues, right up until the absolute second. But a darker question is gnawing at his brain. How on earth did someone smuggle these colossal nightmares into a school basement without raising a single red flag? Staring at the horrific scene, Miria swallows hard, admitting that her brother's wild conspiracy theories about this academy were dead on all along. Gripping her weapon, she suggests laying low in the shadows. Whoever built this monster factory is bound to check on their pets, setting up the perfect window for a deadly ambush. Jin immediately shoots that idea down. Playing the waiting game is a suicide mission. He orders her to initiate a full campus lockdown and obliterate these caged horrors first. Miria pushes back fiercely, insisting they cannot let the twisted mastermind slip through their fingers. But Jin stands his ground. The students' survival has to be priority number one. If these freaks break out and go on a killing spree, the entire campus will turn into a slaughterhouse. He quietly reminds her that her older brother would make the exact same call, and struck by those words, the fiery girl reluctantly nods in agreement. Jin's eyes narrow as he admits a terrifying gut feeling is creeping up on him. And in his world, a bad feeling usually means hell is about to break loose. Deciding to fly solo, he tells her he is going to dive deeper into the facility's core and orders Miria to scramble back to the surface, grab her brother, and throw the academy into absolute lockdown to shield the civilian kids. Watching her sprint toward the exit, Jin vanishes deeper into the subterranean maze, hunting for anything that could expose the mastermind's endgame. Up in the daylight, absolute chaos is unfolding. That scrawny, rat-faced noble is getting ruthlessly roasted by the crowd. Humiliated, but toxic as ever, he spits out venom, branding Jin an inferior peasant, and screaming that the newcomer destroyed his flawless reputation. Suddenly, the commanding headmaster marches straight up to Lord Gita. She coldly orders the pathetic rat boy to stop thrashing around like a lunatic, noting that he is creeping out the entire student body. After utterly crushing his ego in front of everyone, she pivots to a darker issue, Lord Rudman. That greedy noble has been completely off the grid since dawn. The headmaster is already stressed to the breaking point, and the fat man's sudden ghosting is making her extremely paranoid. Just as panic starts to set in, a suffocating pitch-black cloud suddenly swallows the sky above the academy, signaling that a massive disaster. Cutting back below, Miria is desperately sprinting up the exit stairs. But the second she kicks the blast doors open, her blood freezes. Standing dead in her tracks is Lord Rudman, the missing overweight aristocrat, but his face is twisted into a demonic, psychotic grin. It is violently clear this guy is plotting a massacre. Meanwhile, thousands of feet below, Jin steps into the labs, staring down at a cluster of bizarre, blood-red portals. They are literally pulsating, expanding, and contracting like breathing flesh. Disgusted, and more importantly, if Kagura is the sick genius who birthed it. Jin spots the metallic message cube Kagura left in the dust, sitting right beside a nanomachine injector. The ancient survivor praised this tiny piece of tech, holds the answers he desperately needs to fix this absolute nightmare. He quickly hits the power button, and Kagura's glowing hologram pops up casually sipping a cup of coffee, like nothing is wrong. The genius had perfectly predicted Jin would stumble into this exact facility first, knowing it was basically next door to his cryopod. The eccentric doctor explains he used this lab to build something impossible. A piece of tech that humanity could not crack even hundreds of millions of years ago. He packed a tiny fraction of that mind-bending power straight into the injector, saving it entirely for Jin to use. After patting himself on the back for being an absolute genius, he drops the bombshell. The god-tier invention, a literal teleportation gate. Jin freezes in his tracks. He never once dreamed Kagura possessed the brains to pull off something this massive. Suddenly, all the scattered puzzle pieces slammed together. Argus had mentioned monsters popping up across the city out of thin air. Blaring warning sirens absolutely flood Jin's brain, because whoever is pulling the levers on this machine is the puppet master orchestrating this entire crisis, especially with a literal army of bloodthirsty freaks locked inside the cages surrounding him. But wait. A glaring detail in the crazy scientist's video catches his eye. Kagura's original teleporter glowed a brilliant blue. So what the hell is this menacing blood-red monstrosity towering over him right now? Right as the clock strikes midnight, the massive machine roars to life with an ear-piercing violent hum. Jin instantly drops into a bracing his body for whatever hellish nightmare is about to rip its way through the portal. But the gate stays empty. Instead, every single beat, topside Argus and his holy knights watch their absolute worst fears play out in real time. Hundreds of rabid invaders plummet from the sky directly into the royal capital, dropping down like they just spawned into a battle royale match. Deep underground, the greasy aristocrat spins toward Miria, flashing the most gut-wrenching, predatory smile imaginable. He snickers, mocking the icy girl for looking so ridiculously stiff and eager to strike. Miria glares daggers at the disgusting pig responsible for this massacre, demanding he step aside, unless he desperately wants a death wish. Blinking in genuine shock, Lord Redmond confesses he totally knew she was sniffing around his tracks for quite a while. Sadly for her, the little detective pieced the puzzle together way too late. Miria barks at him to explain himself, but the lunatic just throws his arms out calmly, declaring. The balding creep lets out a long sigh, complaining that he originally wanted to push this grand finale back a bit further. But two pesky rats scurrying through his hidden lab forced his hand early. More importantly, he figured out that the true threat to his empire is Jin. Every single alarm bell in his gut screamed that this mysterious new instructor was going to be an absolute nightmare for his exactly like Miria's older brother. He does not even need hard evidence to confirm his suspicions. He just knows Jin was the mastermind who sniffed out his secret tunnel. Tired of running his mouth, the fat noble decides it is time to slaughter every last witness, right here, on the spot. Miria nearly bursts out laughing at the sheer delusion that this overweight slob actually thinks he can take her down. A twisted, downright demonic smirk stretches across Redmond's chubby cheeks as he starts bragging about the godlike energy he has hoarded. But the cocky bastard fails to notice the tiny girl tiptoeing right behind his back, gripping a heavy metal pot literally bigger than his skull. A bead of nervous sweat rolls down Miria's face. She is completely torn between panicking for the kid's safety and wondering if this hilariously stupid sneak attack will actually work. Without a single second of hesitation, Hakama winds up and swings with all the fury her little arms can handle, absolutely braining the fat villain with a massive thud. Miria's jaw hits the floor. She stares at the petite girl. Hakama frantically stammers out that she was just desperately searching for Jin. The surface is a total war zone right now, and surviving this apocalypse without their overpowered guardian is basically impossible. While scurrying through the halls, she accidentally bumped into Kudo, another brain. That girl tipped her off, mentioning their mysterious professor had slipped into the storage wing just minutes ago. The new girl feels a quick wave of guilt for knocking a teacher out cold, but Hakama firmly insists the greasy creep totally had it coming. Plus, since the fat villain never actually saw who sneaked up behind him, they can easily frame this snobby blonde princess if the situation goes totally south. Right on cue, Jin's heavy footsteps echo as he finally breaches the top of the stair. Puzzled, he demands to know what went wrong, only to spot a limp piglet slumped across the floor like a toppled bowling pin. Hakama abruptly jolts him out of his daze, urgently warning him that the streets outside have plunged into absolute anarchy. The guy barely flinches. He already saw this nightmare coming. Those laboratory intruders could have only been warped to one specific core. The horrifying truth drains the color from Miria's face, prompting the trio to sprint out the doors without dropping a single heartbeat. Towering infernos swallow the skyline, leaving nearly half the metropolis crumbling in smoking ashes. Panicked civilians sprint frantically through the streets, while pure hell erupts alongside a swarm of grotesque invaders. A colossal Vilgax-looking beast easily towers above the rest as the ultimate alpha. Witnessing her precious hometown shattered into debris strips Miria of all her words. Meanwhile, a suffocating wave of failure slams right into Jin's chest. He curses himself, realizing he should have. Hakama fiercely yanks his focus right back into the present moment. She gestures toward the gigantic, tentacled abomination, which is currently charging up a cataclysmic blast, locked dead onto the royal palace. Desperate to fix his massive blunder, Jin slams the mysterious syringe Kagura left behind right into his system. The serum instantly courses through his veins, granting him a restricted variant of That crazy scientist previously warned him that these nanites only pack enough juice for a single jump every 24 hours. Worse still, the warp distance is strictly tethered to wherever the user can directly see. But those limits are meant for average humans, and Jin is far beyond normal. A powerhouse of his level can basically warp to the absolute edge of his vision. Without a single flicker of hesitation, he completely blinks out of existence. He materializes dead center in the trajectory of the apocalyptic laser. Deep inside the fortress walls, a hyperventilating woman sprints directly toward the royal guildmaster, Harden Gunslot. She breathlessly warns him about the gargantuan invader currently eclipsing the outer barricades. Rather than losing his mind, Harden remains chillingly stoic. He already understands this crisis has shattered every standard emergency protocol. Even so, he promises her that every single fighter who can still hold a weapon has already marched onto the battlefield. Plus, the remaining Holy Knights are currently charging out to crush the spreading madness. Tragically, this reassurance only amplifies her terror when Harden delivers a gut-wrenching truth. Exactly half of the elite Holy Knights are stationed miles away from the capital on a separate operation. By now, Harden is absolutely convinced this ambush was meticulously orchestrated. These monsters intentionally held back until the kingdom's fiercest protectors were scattered abroad before triggering the assault. If the Grand Commander were standing here, he could have likely slaughtered the towering corruptor. But today, they must scrape by without him. Suddenly, the Alpha Corruptor unleashes a world-ending beam straight at the Citadel. Hardin solemnly braces himself, accepting that their final moments have arrived. Yet, just as everyone assumes the palace is about to be vaporized, Jin abruptly materializes and tanks the cataclysmic strike head-on. The frantic woman instantly recognizes him as the mysterious guy from Kodama village, practically sobbing tears of sheer relief. Once the blinding light fades, Jin touches down on the rubble, channeling a massive surge of energy straight into his palm. Wasting zero time, he blasts a vicious counterattack right back at the Titan. The explosive shot connects, but despite its raw intensity, it merely leaves a superficial gash on the Corruptor's massive shoulder. Jin immediately spots the core issue. This freak is way too gigantic to obliterate with a single casual blast. To make matters worse, that warp jump sucked dry way more juice than anticipated, stripping away his usual combat style. So our boy violently shifts his strategy. He unsheathes his blade, shifting his focus to butcher the Titan with blistering speed, rather than sheer explosive firepower. With a single, vicious swipe through the empty air, he launches a lethal shockwave that carves into the Corruptor from afar. He then rockets forward, acutely aware that his inflicted wounds are already knitting themselves back together in an instant. Regardless, that split-second opening is all the leverage he requires. Jin weaponizes the absolute basics of nanomachine manipulation. First up, he completely zeroes out his own body mass, manipulating the air pressure around him. He summons a fierce gale, launching himself forward like a human missile. Streaking across the chaotic battlefield, he spots a fallen knight, pinned beneath a monstrous corruptor, and mere seconds from becoming its next meal. Just as the beast opens its jaws, a blazing fireball slams into its flank, incinerating the creature where it stands. The cavalry has arrived. Students from Harness Academy have officially entered the fray. With their timely backup, the battered warrior struggles back onto his feet. But the rookie's victory is short-lived, as two vicious corruptors instantly trap them in a deadly corner. Fortunately for them, they happen to be standing right in Jin's crash path. Blazing past them, our guy effortlessly obliterates both abominations without missing a single beat. He swats them aside as if the soldiers and students are left frozen in awe, completely speechless at the absolute slaughter they just witnessed. Jin doesn't even slow down, rocketing straight toward the boss corruptor to close the gap before the monster can heal its wounds. Sensing the incoming threat, the Titan hurls a massive strike his way, but Jin smoothly weaves past the assault, his momentum unbroken. He carves through every single creature foolish enough to block his path, refusing to waste even a fraction of a second. Finally reaching the towering boss, he slashes brutally into its leg, shattering its balance and sending the giant. Before the beast can even react, Jin unleashes a blinding flurry of strikes across its massive torso. The devastating barrage brings the colossal Titan crashing helplessly into the dirt. The second it twitches to get back up, Jin manifests a spear of pure energy and drives it mercilessly right through the monster's skull. A massive shockwave detonates across the entire battlefield. And just like that, the apex predator is exterminated, leaving the surviving crowds completely stunned, wondering who on earth this absolute beast of a man really is. Fast forward 3 days, and the locals are already hard at work rebuilding their ruined neighborhoods. Meanwhile, Jin kicks back in his room, breathing a sigh of relief that the city's casualties weren't nearly as apocalyptic as he feared. It was an absolute bloodbath, yet somehow the capital managed to dodge complete destruction. He even gives props to the Holy Knights. Despite being sidelined during the boss fight, they scrambled quickly into action. Their post-battle cleanup operation was nothing short of military precision. As for the Academy, it has been totally locked down for a massive criminal probe. Lord Rudman, the prime suspect behind this entire mess, a bunch of shady instructors and high-ranking campus officials caught in his web, have also been thrown into holding cells. Basically anyone with even a hint of dirt on their hands is being hauled off to the royal palace for interrogation. Jin figures the school gates will stay chained up for the foreseeable future. But this whole nightmare has forced him into deep thought. Whenever targets clump together, he can exterminate them in one clean sweep. However, if an invasion spreads out across a massive zone, keeping if he is serious about shielding this era's innocent from the corruptors, with that grim reality checking in, he whips out the mysterious cube Kagura left for him. But just as he zones in, a sharp knock rattles his door. Cracking it open, he finds Miria waiting outside, explaining that her big brother has requested an audience with him. Word is Argus wants to officially express his gratitude and talk business. Jin raises an eyebrow, wondering why she bothered making the trip herself, when the entire campus is supposed to be off limits. Miria quickly defends herself, insisting that dispatching a mere servant to fetch a powerhouse like him would be a huge insult, so she stepped up to deliver the invitation personally. Acting as the official, smirking at her formal tone, Jin playfully roasts her, asking if she has finally retired. That whole inferior species garbage. Miria frantically shakes her head, swearing she has done some heavy soul-searching after witnessing his godlike display on the battlefield. She finally gets that you cannot judge a book by its cover, and that everyone, regardless of their background, is owed basic human dignity. She is practically on her knees pleading for forgiveness when Hakama strolls in, instantly mocking the noble girl for her sudden dramatic personality swap. Jin's face lights up at the sight of Hakama, who lazily admits she was just dying of boredom back at her dorm. Then she struts right past Miria like she literally owns the room, instantly triggering the noble's temper and earning herself a loud, shameless country bumpkin insult. After she bursts straight into his room, Jin has to seriously question if she actually learned her lesson. A short while later, the crew pulls up to the lavish estate of Argus, greeted by a literal army of bowing staff. The head butler assigns Nino and Poir to escort their VIP guests, a task the cheerful duo eagerly accepts. Strolling down the sprawling, gilded hallways, Jin checks in to see if the kids caught any collateral damage during the recent bloodbath. Thankfully, they walked away without a scratch. The entire manor staff threw themselves in harm's way to keep them safe, lifting a massive weight off the shoulders of Jin. Nino excitedly blurts out that Jin is the absolute MVP of the entire disaster. Catching him off guard, Jin asks who fed him that story. Nino points the finger straight at Miria. Chest-puffed out Miria proudly declares that hyping up her master is basically her sacred duty as his #1 disciple. This sudden fangirl energy leaves Jin utterly baffled, especially when she starts aggressively lecturing the two kids. She orders them to take copious notes on Jin, reminding them they share his The pair enthusiastically nods along. Nino leans in, whispering that their once terrifyingly strict boss has somehow miraculously softened up. That little detail immediately triggers flashbacks of Zars for Jin. This complete 180 in her personality is genuinely giving him whiplash. The grand tour finally ends at the private study of Argus. Poir delivers a polite knock, announcing the arrival of their... Stepping inside the heavy oak doors, Jin spots Argus, sharing the room with a very... Sinking into the plush leather chairs, Argus immediately offers an apology for the completely unannounced summons. Jin simply waves it off, assuring them no harm was... Argus officially introduces Hardin. The veteran guildmaster intensely sizes Jin up, his eyes calculating, before leaning in for a deeply respectful handshake. Hardin drops the pleasantries, admitting he had a front-row seat to the absolute masterclass Jin put on during the monster outbreak. If Jin had not completely obliterated that alpha corruptor, their entire kingdom would be nothing but smoldering ash right now. Overcome with gratitude, the hardened leader bows his head, pouring his heart out, but classic Jin immediately deflects the spotlight. With zero ego, he points out he only swatted the big bug. The Holy Knights did all the grueling grunt work to clean up the rest of the horde. They are the ones who truly deserve the medals. Hardin is genuinely caught off guard by this unbelievable humility. He starts racking his brain, wondering if this guy is just completely... Cutting to the chase, Jin casually asks if a simple thank you is the real reason he was dragged all the way here. The atmosphere instantly shifts as Hardin drops the real bomb. The royal family is demanding an audience. But before he steps foot in the palace, they need some hard answers. The face of the guildmaster turns dead serious, his voice dropping an octave as he demands to know the true identity of Jin. He lays out the facts. With guild operatives embedded in every single corner of the kingdom, practically nothing slips under his radar. Naturally, he ran a full background check on their mysterious savior. The results say, a complete and total ghost. Argus chimes in, demanding the raw truth. He sternly warns Jin not to dance around the issue this time. He looks him dead in the eye, asking exactly. Jin lets out a heavy, exhausted sigh. He clarifies he was never actually trying to play the mysterious stranger. The real issue. His backstory is so insanely unbelievable, he figured people would just call him crazy. Argus looks him dead in the eyes, swearing that if Jin speaks the unvarnished truth, he will take it as gospel. Cornered, Jin he casually drops the ultimate bombshell. He is a pure-blooded human from 100 million years ago. The room instantly goes pin-drop silent. The gears turn in the head of Argus. He suddenly remembers the ancient forbidden legends of Kodama village, and the puzzle pieces violently snap into place. It finally makes sense. Jin is the mythical being who spent an eternity slumbering behind that legendary sealed door. Hardin practically short-circuits trying to process this absolute insanity. But Miria fiercely jumps to the... After all, this is the same guy who effortlessly shattered the ancient, unbreakable seals beneath the academy. She turns to her brother, reminding him that he literally just witnessed the god-tier power of Jin firsthand. Honestly, Argus is way more terrified by his perpetually icy sister acting like a hardcore fanatic than the whole time travel story. He stares at her in sheer disbelief, desperately wondering what... Shrugging it off, Jin confirms he spent eons napping deep beneath their very soil. As for his grand master plan in the royal capital, it is almost painfully simple. He just wanted to catch up on 100 million years of missed history. When Hardin presses him for specifics, Jin holds up two fingers. Two primary targets. Target number 1, the Corruptors. These grotesque beasts prowled the Earth 100 million years ago, but scientifically, they should be entirely extinct in this era. Hardin leans in, questioning how they survived. Jin reveals the truth, linking it to the mystical energy modern humans call spirits. Eons ago, these radiant particles blanketed the globe. Since corruptors thrive exclusively in toxic, polluted wastelands, and spirits naturally cleanse that very corruption, the math does not add up. Logically, that cleansing aura should have starved the monsters into extinction. So why are they still roaming around? Jin does not have all the puzzle pieces yet, but his mysterious cube hints at a terrifying reality. The corruptors are mutating. Hardin stares at the glowing artifact, utterly captivated. He questions if it is a relic from a lost civilization, and what cryptic engine drives it. A crazy thought crosses his mind. Could this guy actually be a time traveler from 100 million years ago? Brushing off the stairs, Jin shifts focus. He banked on the royal capital hoarding ancient archives, which is exactly why he made the trek here. But Argus is not letting him off the hook that easily. He demands the second reason. Jin admits he is hunting down hidden research labs. Sure, they found one buried directly beneath the capital's streets, but his ancient comrade originally built that base. Dozens of duplicate bunkers are scattered across the globe, and Jin plans to unearth every single one. He pauses, debating whether to drop the bomb about the hidden power boosts Kagura left behind. Nah, better keep his cards close to his chest. Instead, he delivers a chilling promise. He will obliterate the corruptors from existence. That is his absolute mission. Dead silence fills the room. The tale sounds completely unhinged, yet his burning determination is impossible to fake. Breaking the tension, Argus nods. He buys it. After all, they share the exact same endgame, wiping out the monstrous threat. Still, he issues a stern warning. Keep this time travel talk under wraps because ordinary folk will slap a crazy label on him instantly. Jin nods, knowing he is right. Argus glances over, asking for Hardin's verdict. Hardin shrugs. If his commander trusts the kid, he is on board too. Plus, a spy plotting to ruin the kingdom would not have thrown himself into a meat grinder just to defend their walls. A sudden knock shatters the moment. Poir peeks in, dropping a reality check their royal appointment is creeping up fast. Startled by the clock, Argus orders Poir and Nino to get Jin scrubbed and suited up. Fast forward a few hours, and the crew is marching straight toward the Grand Palace. Jin zones out, mentally bracing himself to stand face to face with royalty. Honestly, the stiff formal wear is bugging him more than the meeting itself. Argus chuckles, swearing the sharp suit fits him perfectly, even teasing that the ladies back at base were drooling over his makeover. Hardin chimes in, clarifying that the VIP sitting on the throne is Kirmosia's first prince, ruling as the acting monarch, meaning Jin needs to look the part of a polished hero. But to Jin, this political theater is a massive headache. He just prays this royal handshake does not suck him into another tedious drama. The massive doors finally swing open, revealing the throne room. The squad drops into respectful bows. A commanding voice orders them up. Jin lifts his chin, locking eyes with Terrace Kirmosia himself. Playing along, Jin offers a crisp, formal greeting. Terrace smiles back, delivering a smooth thank you on behalf of the crown. But then the prince smirks. He casually mentions Jin's roots in Kodama village, mocking how an elite fighter crawled out of such a pathetic dirt-poor nowhere. Jin's blood instantly boils. Dropping the fake pleasantries, Terrace gets straight to the point. He barks an order, demanding Jin kneel as his personal holy knight. He expects total, unquestioning obedience to the crown. Jin does not utter a single word. He just glares, radiating pure. The prince's smile vanishes, snapping at Jin, asking if he Hardin quickly intervenes, snapping a harsh truth at the prince. They invited Jin to this place, making this heavy-handed coercion totally out of line. But Jin simply raises a hand, cutting Hardin off, and steps forward to speak for himself. He flatly states that his time in the royal capital is strictly temporary. Terrace shoots back, smugly pointing out his current gig at the academy. Jin dismisses it as a fleeting side quest. Terrace's eyes narrow, demanding to know if that equates to a flat-out rejection of his royal offer. When Jin refuses to bend the knee, Terrace snaps his fingers, barking. Hardin throws himself into the fray, furiously demanding what the hell the prince thinks he is pulling. But Terrace coldly drops a bombshell. Jin is now officially suspected of high treason. He weaves his twisted logic, noting that the invader had been lurking right behind that ancient sealed door, deep beneath the academy, and Jin was the guy who cracked it wide open. Then the arrogant royal has the sheer audacity to suggest this entire rescue op was a fake-out masterminded by Jin himself. Hardin knows this wild accusation is absolute garbage. It is an incredibly forced setup, yet Jin just stands there in dead silence. Terrace presses his advantage, smoothly claiming that letting Jin's monstrous abilities run wild without a leash would be a tragedy. If the fighter simply bows to him right now, the prince is perfectly willing to sweep everything under the rug. But if he defies him, Terrace glares, swearing he will have no choice but to execute. Watching from the sidelines, Argus instantly realizes that Jin is entirely innocent of these ridiculous. The newcomer had barely stepped foot in the capital, and Argus had already handed over his entire investigation report to the Royal Knights. They absolutely knew the facts. But catching a nasty smirk on one of the knights' faces, the dark reality hits Argus like a truck. They played him. Intense anger boils inside him. He kicks himself for missing the glaring red flags surrounding the castle's over-the-top security protocols. The heads of the 3rd and 4th squads are practically brainwashed zealots for Prince Terrace. They would gladly cross any line for him, no matter how dirty or deranged the order. Argus also puts the puzzle together. If he had pushed back against these commanders earlier, they likely would have tried to slaughter Jin right out of the gate. Terrace locks eyes with Jin, firmly stating that a beast who can crush a giant corruptor is way too much of a threat to wander around freely. Acting like some generous savior, the prince holds out his hand, tossing out one final lifeline. Bend the knee or bleed out on this floor. Jin just tilts his head, casually muttering that he just does not get it. Terrace blinks, totally thrown off. Jin coolly questions the value of empty words when heavily armed guards are literally pressing steel against his throat. Even if he played along and swore loyalty right now, he could easily vanish tomorrow, turning the whole pledge into a total joke. The way Jin sees it, the prince just desperately needs to hear his own ego stroked. He stares right through the royal, asking if this entire stunt is just to feed his pathetic power trip, or if there is actually some hidden agenda driving this madness. Boom. Direct hit to the ego. The 4th commander completely snaps, aggressively shoving his spear inches from Jin's face, violently screaming at him to watch his filthy mouth in front of royalty. In a blinding flash, Jin's hand snaps out, gripping the dead. The elite guard feels a terrifying yank. Blind panic sets in as he realizes he is completely outmatched. Without breaking a single sweat, Jin hoists the spear with the heavily armored man still dangling from it and brutally smashes him directly into the stone tiles. Instant knockout. Terrace's jaw practically hits the floor. Meanwhile, Argus breaks into a cold sweat, watching this absolute powder keg explode right before his eyes. The third commander desperately tries to blast Jin with her spirit magic, but her energy completely flatlines. Completely out of option, she screams for the remaining guards to rush him. A soldier violently thrusts a pike forward. Jin casually sidesteps as snatches the pole, plants a brutal kick square in his chest, and whips the stolen weapon around in a massive arc. Armor shatters as multiple attackers are wiped out in one flawless spin. Terrace frantically spins toward Argus, shrieking like a complete maniac for him to fix this. He commands the warrior to ruthlessly punish this street dog for daring to bare his fangs at the royal family. Argus freezes for a painful heartbeat. Heavy guilt weighs on him as he slowly unsheaths his sword, quietly muttering an apology that it is strictly business. Terrace bursts into insane triumphant laughter, howling for his troops to bring Jin down, dead or alive. An entire wave of armored killers blindly charges forward, but Jin taps into his raw aura and vanishes into thin air before a single blade can graze him. His cold voice violently echoes off the grand wall, casually dropping a terrifying warning. If he actually decided to let loose, this entire room would instantly become a slaughterhouse. He could effortlessly erase this entire city from existence without shedding a single drop of sweat. Yet that thought never crossed his mind. He actively chose to fight alongside the people of this timeline, arriving here solely to be their ultimate shield. Suddenly, he materializes like a ghost right behind Terrace, chillingly whispering that he offers absolutely zero mercy to anyone breeding misery and despair in innocent lives. Leaning in closer, Jin drops one razor-sharp question on the royal heir. Where do his loyalties lie? Paralyzed by pure terror, Terrace literally forgets how to pull oxygen into his lungs. The third commander fiercely barks out, demanding if Jin grasps the gravity of his suicidal actions. Unfazed, Jin coolly fires back that he is simply pushing back against tyrants. Unsurprisingly, that defiant response just pours gasoline. Sprawled out on the cold floor, the fourth commander violently hacks out a desperate demand. Is Jin officially declaring an all-out war against the sovereign kingdom? Jin smoothly corrects them, pointing out that he didn't throw the first punch. They did. Then he lays down his absolute boundaries. If they hold the crown, he can absolutely show the proper respect. If they abide by the nation's laws and bring logical requests to the table, he'll gladly play along. However, he isn't some spineless pawn who blindly swallows their toxic garbage in utter silence. If they try to leash him, they forfeit the right to cry when he fiercely bites back. Shifting his piercing gaze back to Terrace, he questions if this arrogant prince actually thinks the entire universe revolves around him, or if there's a much darker scheme brewing in the shadows. Right before the tension shatters into a bloodbath, the grand doors swing open. The second Princess Charlotte gracefully interrupts, politely requesting to crash their little Argus lets out a massive sigh of relief seeing her clutch arrival, immediately stepping back to let her take the reins. Locking eyes with Terrace, Charlotte drops a casual smirk, noting he seems to be having an absolute Terrace internally panics the second she steps in. Instantly connecting the dots, Argus definitely pulled this string. Charlotte calls him out, stating that if he planned a private party with the kingdom's literal savior, he really should have sent her an invite. She sharply scolds him, highlighting his embarrassing failure to act like a proper stand-in for the king. Furious, Terrace barks back, denying Jin's hero status. In his eyes, anyone flashing their fangs at the royal bloodline is nothing but a filthy criminal. Charlotte beautifully feigns shock. Stepping up the third commander, Wasa aggressively backs him up, pointing out that Charlotte sweetly wonders aloud if that beatdown happened purely because they lacked basic manners first. Wasa fiercely demands to know what she's getting at. Trembling with rage, she points a finger directly at Jin, screaming that he was inches away from assassination. Charlotte casually brushes it off, noting that Jin was merely chilling behind terrace, before turning to verify it with Jin himself. Flashing a knowing grin, Jin smoothly plays along. He swears he was just standing there harmlessly asking a tiny question. Terrace practically foams at the mouth, but Charlotte gracefully shuts him down with lethal elegance. She coldly remarks that labeling a man a traitor just for standing in his blind spot makes the prince look pathetically insecure. Dipping into a respectful bow, she promises Jin that she'll never demand his absence. Instead, she warmly asks if he'd be willing to have their backs as a genuine friend whenever disaster strikes the nation. Without missing a beat, Jin confidently accepts the offer. Grateful, Charlotte suggests they bounce immediately, subtly throwing shade at the room's incredibly toxic vibe. Striding forward, with pure authority, she commands the royal knights to part ways, and weapons drop instantly as the guards scramble aside, leaving Terrace standing there utterly humiliated and seething with raw hatred. The second they step outside the fortress walls, Argus frantically interrogates Jin about why he'd pull such a borderline suicidal stunt. Jin stays dead silent. Honestly, he picked up an incredibly sinister aura leaking off Terrace, and he's praying his instincts are dead wrong. Pivoting the conversation, Jin throws a genuine thank you to Charlotte for the massive save. She graciously accepts his gratitude, deeply apologizing for her brother's unhinged behavior, while hoping this doesn't ruin their budding alliance. Jin warmly solidifies their bond. Cutting and Argus questions what drove Terrace to pull such a desperately reckless move. Charlotte confesses she's entirely in the dark regarding his specific endgame, but she knows her brother is blinded by toxic ambition. The moment Terrace actually seizes the crown, he fully plans to ignite global warfare just to violently conquer neighboring borders. She figures Jin's mere presence feels like a massive roadblock to him. Even so, Charlotte swears to Jin that she won't let Terrace pull a stunt like that ever again. As they speak, Hardin is likely breaking the news of the clash directly to the king. Once the king's royal gag order drops, Terrace won't be able to target Jin so freely. But dodging assassins isn't what's actually bothering Jin. Seeing his hesitation, she stares him down, asking if he is willing to place his trust in her. Sizing up her fierce resolve, Jin figures she is a solid bet and nods in agreement. With their new alliance locked in, Argus chimes in, wondering where they are off to next. Charlotte smirks, claiming it would be an absolute disgrace to leave the kingdom's savior empty-handed. She then raises an eyebrow, asking if the rumors about him crashing at a run-down inn are actually true. The moment he nods, she instantly resolves to upgrade his living situation. Her grand reward, a massive, jaw-dropping estate. She casually mentions it is an antique noble villa that has been gathering dust for ages. Since the previous lord skipped town, the entire property is Jin's to do with as he pleases. Pushing open the heavy front doors, he steps into a breathtaking, spotless foyer, complete with a dazzling crystal chandelier sparkling overhead. Frankly, it is a ridiculous step up for a guy who just woke up butt naked in a crumbled laboratory a few days ago. Sweating slightly, Jin nervously double-checks if it is actually cool for him to accept a gift this insane. Charlotte flashes a bright, reassuring smile, telling him she elaborates that this lavish estate originally belonged to a high-ranking count. However, it has been sitting totally vacant for quite some time now. Skeptical Jin asks what happens if the original owner randomly shows up to reclaim it. But catching the dark, knowing smirk creeping across Charlotte's face, clearly some shady royal business is better left buried. Jin still feels overwhelmed by the crazy handout, but Argus pats his back, stating it just proves how much the crown values his incredible power. Giving the boy a friendly shove inside, the commander officially welcomes him to his brand new home. Jin marvels at the grand halls, though he quickly points out the glaring issue. This fortress is catching his drift. Argus immediately offers to arrange a staff of servants to keep the place running. In fact, he guarantees that Nino and Poir would jump at the chance to manage the estate, especially since it is for Jin. Jin hesitates, wondering if he is overstepping, but Argus warmly reminds the kid that he already owes him a massive. To ease the kid's guilt over the freebies Argus casually asks for, one little favor in return. The camera cuts over to the 7th Unit's bustling training grounds. Karina is locked in a fierce sparring match, effortlessly sweeping a fellow knight off his feet before slamming him down in total victory. Rhea blows the whistle, highly praising the girl's sharp progress, though Karina grits her teeth, knowing she is still miles away from where she needs to be. During the recent monster outbreak, all she could manage was sweeping up the weak trash mobs, while Jin casually obliterated that colossal corruptor, all by himself. Just replaying that brutal power gap in her head makes her blood boil. Her pride utterly refuses to accept how a guy from a supposedly inferior race could possess such game-breaking strength. Suddenly, Argus and Charlotte stroll onto the dirt field, with Jin trailing behind them, a sight that instantly sets Karina on edge. She glares, wondering what the hell this overpowered freak is doing on her turf. Meanwhile, Jin turns to the commander, finally asking what this promised. Argus just chuckles, hinting that a guy as sharp as Jin should have already figured it out. Glancing at the sweating soldiers, Jin guesses he is supposed to whip these holy knights into shape, which Argus eagerly confirms. The commander turns serious, reminding Jin of the completely unhinged hostility Terrace displayed earlier that very day. With both Terrace and Charlotte locked in a cutthroat battle for the crown, it is only a matter of time before the Mad Prince strikes again. And when that bloodbath kicks off, the only shield standing between Charlotte and certain death is the loyal 7th unit. Since that do-or-die moment could drop on them at any second, Argus desperately needs Jin. Jin falls silent, scanning the sprawling field of exhausted. To their credit, their combat fundamentals are rock solid, proving they grind themselves to the bone every single day. Yet through the eyes of an ancient powerhouse, they are tragically missing one crucial puzzle piece. A nostalgic grin slowly spreads across his face, as intense, battle-hardened memories from 100 million years ago flood his mind. Earning his badge as a top-tier national operative didn't come cheap, so Jin, because out in the field, his survival was always on the line. Argus claps his hands together, rallying the squad. He proudly reveals they've brought in a legendary national hero as a guest drill sergeant to completely. He barks that Jin is here to hammer out their glaring weaknesses, demanding a loud and clear confirmation. The squad roars back as one single, sweeping a sharp gaze across the recruits. Jin silently notes that rule followers are always a total breeze to mold. The stubborn rebels, though, total headaches. He kicks things off with a pretty basic command. Needing to gauge their raw endurance, he points out toward the dirt track, ordering them to sprint laps around the compound's outer edge. Karina instantly bites back. She crosses her arms, complaining that they already grind through that boring routine daily. She brags that their gas tanks are totally full. Flashing a mocking smirk, she asks if the great hero traveled all this way just to waste their time. Rhea and Argus scramble to shut her up, but Jin just waves it off. He smoothly apologizes and decides to flip the script. Shrugging off his heavy coat, he slowly strolls over to the racks holding the wooden practice gear. He shoots Karina a glance, casually asking if the spear is her main weapon. The second she nods, Jin snatches up a wooden polearm. He squares up, challenging her to land just one solid strike against him. No ticking clock. If she scores a single clean blow, she skips the track completely. A knowing grin spreads across Jin's face. He already figured out that a hothead like her. Karina flashes a cocky smirk. She openly questions if the guy even knows which end of the weapon, so Jin lets his body do the talking. He whips the long staff through the air like an absolute feather, seamlessly twirling it over his knuckles as effortlessly as a tiny toothpick. The sheer, intimidating wind pressure he generates instantly silences. Ending his flashy display, he stares her dead in the eye, coolly stating that absolutely no weapon is out of his league. Flashback to 100 million years ago. A younger Jin was relentlessly drilling his polearm techniques. Kagura wandered over, offering a cold beverage. He playfully teased the guy. Wiping his brow, Jin admitted he was obsessed with binging superhero cartoons back when he was just a kid. But Kagura just rolled his eyes. He clarified. He firmly reminded the workaholic that he was already sitting on the throne as the nation's undisputed #1 operative. He gave him a friendly nudge, asking if it wouldn't kill him to just chill out and breathe every once in a while. But Jin's expression stayed dead serious. He flatly stated that his Black Ops missions constantly forced him to slip deep behind enemy lines, to dismantle, and frequently headquarters dropped him into the absolute meat grinder. That meant he had to scavenge and craft his own lethal gear right there. If he managed to pry a random blade or blunt object off a guard, he needed the absolute muscle memory to wield it perfectly, just to stay alive. Boosting his chances of making it home by just 1% made the endless blood. Rubbing his temples with a heavy defeated sigh, his buddy swore that one day he'd build a gadget so insanely overpowered that Jin would never have to stress over firepower ever again. Snapping back to the present day, the cocky recruit totally takes the bait. Karina aggressively lunges forward, violently thrust. Jin lazily deflects the heavy blow, without even breaking a single bead of sweat. As the wooden shafts brutally collide, he smoothly parries her guard wide open. He humbles her a second time, then a third. In a flash, the proud knight has tasted the dirt 15 agonizing times back to panting heavily. She desperately begs for just one more shot at redemption, but the brutal outcome remains exactly. The veteran casually shuts down her furious rapid-fire, while effortlessly dodging and weaving. His tactical mind stays razor-sharp, silently breaking. Her footwork is undeniably snappy, and her defensive reflexes definitely aren't too shabby either. She packs a genuinely serious punch, injecting devastating, bone-crushing momentum into every single forward jab. Deep down, the seasoned hero is genuinely blown away by the explosive physical spec. Still, raw power alone doesn't save her. With a single, surgically precise swipe, he violently disarms her, handing the stubborn girl. The dust settles, but Karina flat out refuses to throw in the towel. Panting heavily, she screams that she's still got fight left in her. Jin coldly brushes her off. Her gas tank is completely empty. He bluntly points out that the harder she forces it, the sloppier her strikes actually get. Her glaring weakness: zero endurance. She leans way too heavily on raw brute strength, leaving her technique terribly unpolished. It clicks instantly for Jin. In this modern era, flashy spirit arts completely dominate the battlefield. Compared to the hardened, blood-soaked veterans of his past life, the baseline skills here are like night and day. That seals the deal on his very first objective. He has to completely rebuild these holy knights' cardio from absolute scratch. Got any more complaints? Jin asks, offering a steady hand to pull her up from the dirt. Karina bites her lip, utterly baffled that he hasn't dropped a single bead of sweat. It deeply stings her pride, but she bites the bullet. He is insanely strong. She grabs his hand, and without missing a beat, Jin barks the order for the entire squad. After watching their elite fighter get brutally folded 16 times in a row, the rest of the squad starts sweating bullets, terrified of the impending training hell. Meanwhile, buried deep in the damp shadows of the royal dungeon, Terrace strolls past the rusty bars, finally halting before one specific iron cage. He swings the heavy door wide open, instantly startling the shackled prisoner inside. Flashing a dark grin, Terrace casually mentions he wants a little one-on-one with the criminal mastermind behind the recent bloodbath, Lord Rudman. The disgraced noble coldly snaps that they have absolutely nothing to discuss, but Terrace easily spots his unnerving calmness. Still scheming behind bars, are we? Terrace probes. Rudman fiercely plays the fool, yet drops a chilling warning. Even though Terrace barely survived the slaughter, the crown is inevitably doomed to... He reaches into his coat, dangling a glowing pink pendant right in front of the prisoner's face. "Were you planning to unleash this?" he mocks. Rudman turns completely pale, his composure shattering as he desperately demands to know how Terrace uncovered his... Terrace chuckles. Did this old fool really think he was the only one in the loop? He is well aware it's a terrifying invasion relic, a cursed artifact, designed to bottle up the catastrophic power. He even knows that Rudman secretly triggered a similar item to spark the recent riot. As pure panic sets in, Terrace waves him off, telling him to take a breath because this is where the real negotiation finally kicks off. Terrace knows exactly how much disgust Rudman holds for the Kermosha bloodline, so he boldly pitches a dark alliance. To him, the current king and Princess Charlotte are painfully pathetic and soft. If these weaklings keep steering the ship, the entire nation is guaranteed to be invaded and wiped off the map. "Are you plotting to burn this kingdom to ashes yourself?" Rudman gasps. Without missing a beat, Terrace replies with a deadpan, "Absolutely." He firmly believes the current system must be obliterated to forge a much more brutal, iron-fisted empire from the rubble. But to pull off this grand coup, he desperately needs the captive's invasion relic. Intrigued by this insane ambition, Rudman cautiously agrees. However, he warns that he won't guarantee Terrace the throne in their new world order. "That works for me," Terrace shrugs smoothly. "But first, you have to pledge your absolute loyalty to me, right here, right now." Rudman narrows his eyes at the odd request, but Terrace frames it as a simple insurance policy to prevent any future backstabbing. A wicked smirk creeps across Rudman's mind. After all, empty words carry zero weight. Feigning submission, he bends the knee and loudly pledges his eternal allegiance. But the exact second those words leave his lips, the mysterious relic erupts in a blinding flash of purple energy. That ominous aura violently forces its way. It turns out this specific trinket packs a truly horrifying, mind-bending. It forcefully rewires the brain of anyone who speaks an oath, permanent. Suddenly, their biggest lies transform into their most undeniable truth, trapping them in a mental prison of their own making. Stripped of his free will, Rudman collapses to the icy floor, begging for orders like an obedient mutt. Looking down at him, Terrace sneers, calling him absolutely pathetic. To him, this noble is just another disposable chess piece. Staring into the dark abyss of the dungeon, he whispers that the true ruler of this land shouldn't. The crown belongs firmly on his own head. Meanwhile, zooming back to the sunny 7th Unit dirt track, Jin is leading his exhausted recruits on an endless marathon. For a battle-hardened veteran like Jin, this is just a breezy morning jog. But for the arrogant holy knights, they are painfully discovering just how embarrassingly pathetic their cardio is. It is absolute lungs-on-fire nightmare fuel. Jin turns and casually apologizes to Argus for pushing them to the brink of death. Surprisingly, the panting captain waves him off with a tired grin, deeply thanking him instead. This brutal endurance training. Since the holy knights typically ride into battle on horseback and finish fights in a flash using spirit arts, they have never actually needed to push their physical limits. Argus makes it clear he wants to ruthlessly drill their stamina, and Jin is completely on board. Glancing over, Jin spots Charlotte lingering on the sidelines, and gently asks if it is not time she headed back. She worries aloud that she is intruding, but Jin quickly reassures her that is not the case at all. It is obvious Charlotte hates the thought of leaving, yet she knows she needs to slip away before anyone starts barking orders at her. But before she takes off, there is a burning question she needs answered. Snatching a satchel from one of her guards, she reveals a sinister, crimson invasion relic right in front of Jin. Jin violently flinches. Wide-eyed, he demands to know what on earth he is looking at. Charlotte drops the bombshell that this very object was quietly seized from Rudman. It is a twisted, demonic gadget designed to weaponize the horrifying power of corruptors, or invaders, as this era calls them. Its origins and creator remain a total mystery. But the artifact grants a terrifying surge of monstrous power to whoever wields it. Jin stands completely stunned. His mind reels, unable to process that such a nightmare actually exists in this timeline. To his trained eye, the contraption looks like dark machinery fused directly with the rotting flesh of a corruptor. Catching his visceral reaction, Charlotte quickly pieces together that he has crossed paths with something just like this. Jin gives a grim nod. He confesses he stumbled across a sickeningly similar device, buried deep in the Academy's underground level. Deeming the vile artifact way too hazardous to leave intact, he smashed it to pieces right then and there. Suddenly it clicks for Argus. This has to be the exact... Charlotte heavily praises his quick thinking. If their enemies had managed to recover that weapon, a catastrophic bloodbath would have been inevitable. She promises to dig deep into the artifact's shadowy origins from her side, urging Jin to spill any clues he might uncover. Jin solemnly agrees. Once Charlotte vanishes from sight, Argus mutters darkly that they absolutely cannot let a night. They have to stay relentlessly on high alert. When Jin stays deathly quiet, Argus raises an eyebrow, asking what is eating at him. Jin brushes it off as nothing, but beneath his calm exterior, His mind is racing with dark implications. Normally, corruptors are mindless, raging beasts that never stop destroying. Yet lately, these monsters have started waiting in the shadows, coordinating attacks and moving with terror. This chilling shift makes him wonder if something way more sinister than a mere relic is pulling their strings. Then Kagura's ominous warning echoes in his mind. A handful of these freaks had actually started mutating, forcefully adapting to their shifting environment, which could mean an apex predator now exists in Alpha, capable of commanding the entire corruptor horde. 4 agonizing days later, at Harness Academy, the headmaster is finally cut loose after enduring a grueling week-long interrogation. She immediately calls Jin and Argus to her office. Venting her absolute frustration, she complains about how she repeatedly swore to the However, she bitterly concedes that absolute traitors like Rudman were festering right under her nose. Argus gently insists that the blame does not lie with her, but she refuses to let herself off the hook. As the leader of the academy, she feels like a total failure for being so. She openly confesses that if Jin had not stepped up, the devastation would have been completely irreversible. Then she drops the details she uncovered. She knows he was basically just a freelancer hired for the investigation, carrying zero. Because of that, she never in a million years expected a rogue outsider to be their ultimate savior. Rising from her desk, she bows deeply, pouring her heart out as she thanks Jin for shielding both the kingdom and her precious students. The raw sincerity genuinely touches. Straightening up, she shoots him the big question. Does he actually plan to stick around as a professor? Rumor had it that he was packing his bags to quit. Jin freezes, completely caught off guard. His original game plan was just to crash at the academy long enough to hustle up some quick travel funds. But surviving that total nightmare ended up. Now the entire chessboard has flipped. He shoots an awkward glance at Argus, who smoothly chimes in, offering to wrangle up a replacement. Too bad for them, the headmaster instantly shoots that idea down in flames. Jin stepped into the lecturer role, and now he needs to own that commitment. Walking away after a single day. That would be a massive slap in the face to his students. Jin and Argus just exchange a look. They cannot even argue. She is absolutely. Argus scrambles to explain Jin's complicated situation, but the headmaster slices through his excuses. With a sharp wave of her hand, she orders. As their footsteps echo down the dimly lit corridor, Jin suddenly remembers a loose end. He asks about. Argus scoffs. Gita is still locked up, muttering wildly to himself, and desperately plotting new ways to humiliate Jin. So what is the play here? Argus asks, noting the mounting reports of Gita's shady behavior. Jin barely shrugs. Let him go. To him, the guy is completely harmless. The headmaster immediately steps in, reminding them that this snake actively tried to frame Jin. She suggests letting him rot in a cell a little longer to cool off. Moments later, they hit their destination. The heavy doors swing open. Jin stops dead in his tracks. The room is absolutely packed with students. Every single pair of eyes locks onto him, sparkling with anticipation. Completely thrown off, Jin asks what on earth is going on. The headmaster smiles. They came for him. Whispers of the legendary hero who single-handedly saved the kingdom have already ignited the entire academy. Leaning against the wall, Miria rolls her eyes, clearly disgusted by the spectacle. Do these phonies have zero shame? They are suddenly treating Jin like a god, acting as if they had his back from day one. Rias casually leans in and drops a reality bomb. Weren't you exactly like that too? Miria instantly shuts her mouth. A trembling girl steps out of the crowd. She confesses she skipped class to goof off in town when the chaos erupted. Out of nowhere, a vicious corruptor ambushed her. Pinned down and powerless, she realized her own strength was completely useless, just as the monster moved in for the kill. Jin crashed into the scene, snatching her right out of the jaws. Hot tears stream down her cheeks as she bows, whispering a heartfelt. The floodgates open. Dozens of students swarm him, their voices overlapping, as they share the. He pulled them from the brink too. The headmaster places a warm, reassuring hand on Jin's shoulder. She knows he carries his own heavy burdens, but she gently asks if he could find it in his heart to guide these kids, even if it is just every now and then. Jin nods, No hesitation. Suddenly, the narrative plunges 100 million years into the dark, distant past. Kagura delivers a grim briefing. The government has officially branded the invading horrors as corruptors' vile abominations, spawned directly from decay and pure depravity. He breaks down the grim reality these nightmares can only breathe and thrive in, zones choked by massive pollution. But the toxic wasteland is expanding rapidly, and humanity's safe havens are shrinking by the second. Watching the briefing, Jin zones out. His fierce teammate Sana Sakama catches him staring into space and brutally ribs him. The rest of the squad, Kazama Goto and Mizuki Maruyama, quickly pile on. They burst out laughing, wondering where his trademark cocky swagger suddenly vanished to. But Jin is not laughing. A cold dread gnaws at his gut. They are no longer trading blows with humans. They are facing nightmarish freaks that shrug off direct missile strikes like mosquito bites. Do we actually have a shot at surviving this? He mutters. The heavy question wipes the smiles off the guys' faces. But before the dread can fully set in, she violently pinches Jin's cheek, forcing him to look at her. She fiercely reminds him that he is the absolute strongest agent in the nation. He cannot afford to crack now. He needs to paste that arrogant, untouchable smirk right back on his face. Pivoting sharply, she demands a straight answer from Kagura. If we cleanse the environment, these things just shut down, right? Kagura lets out a weary sigh, offering a very hesitant nod. He reveals that the eggheads in the science division are frantically building a mass purification device to scrub the globe clean. The agonizing catch. They have zero idea if humanity can survive long enough for the machine to actually go online. Sana crosses her arms and smirks. Piece of cake. Their job is simple. Hold the line and butcher the corruptors just like they always do. She glances over her shoulder at Jin. Right, boss. Jin finally cracks a faint smile and agrees. Sana beams, but the brutal reality of war cares absolutely nothing for their blind confidence. In the blood-soaked battles that follow, Kazama and Mizuki are mercilessly slaughtered. The world shatters around him. Jin collapses to his knees, his eyes locked in sheer horror. Then a faint whisper of his name shatters his daze. Sana's voice violently yanks him back to reality. He scrambles to her side, a wave of desperate hope washing over him, as he sees she is still clinging to life, and frantically insists they need to patch up her gruesome injuries right. But a gentle shake of her head stops him dead in his tracks. She already knows her clock is run out. Gripping his hand with fading strength, she softly confesses that she won't burden him with the impossible task of saving the entire world from the monstrous corruptors. She begs for just one single promise. She needs him to fight tooth and nail, refusing to surrender until his very last breath. Leaving him with that haunting final wish, Sana slips away into the abyss. Choking back his grief, Jin grabs. Without a shred of hesitation, he declares he is volunteering for the deadly nanomachine human experimentation project. Kagura demands if he has completely lost his mind, delivering a chilling reminder that if his body rejects the tech, it will guarantee. Jin coldly fires back that continuing down his current path is a death sentence anyway, vowing to honor Sana's dying words and never back down. Snapping back to the present day, Jin gasps awake from that agonizing, nightmare-fueled memory. His heavy gaze drifts toward the metallic cubes resting on his nightstand, and he gently scoops one into his palm. Running his thumb over the cold surface, staring intently at the faded photographs of his slaughtered comrade, he renews his blood oath. He will slaughter every last corruptor and claw back a peaceful world. Cut to the blistering northeastern frontiers of the Chromosia Kingdom. Deep inside the Pluta territory, the towering fortress city of Melmos is on high alert. A panicked Holy Knight messenger sprints into the command room, screaming that a hostile force is aggressively marching down from the northern borders of Balehard. But the legendary Grand Master of the Holy Knights, Glen Oz, is already glaring down at the apocalyptic horizon from his massive. A terrifying endless ocean of corruptors is stampeding directly toward their stronghold. A cold sweat breaks out on Glen's forehead as he realizes this apocalyptic horde might completely overwhelm their defenses. Trembling, the messenger begs for orders. Glen channels raw, explosive energy into his palm and blasts a massive wave at the approaching beasts. But in a horrifying twist, his devastating strike harmlessly, his jaw practically hits the floor. Snapping out of his absolute shock, Glenn commands the messenger to sprint to the capital and alert the king this exact second. Stepping up to single-handedly stall the demonic horde, his mind races with sheer terror. The fact that these mindless freaks can now completely erase spirit magic changes everything. To make matters infinitely worse, these feral beasts are marching in flawless military formations. But as the Grandmaster frantically tries to unravel this terrifying mystery, he completely misses the true, blood-curdling nightmare lurking in the shadows of the swarm. Standing dead center in that chaotic ocean of monsters is a chillingly human-like corruptor, silently orchestrating the entire slaughter.